7 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Bill, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 3 public hearings scheduled for tonight. The first public hearing is unfortunately going to be canceled on the advice of our attorney. The notice in the paper was inadvertently incomplete, so we're going to re-advertise that one and reschedule it, which will be later tonight. We'll reschedule it probably for our next town board meeting. So we're going to move right into public hearing number 2, which has to do with oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Let's have a call the roll, Barb.
Councilor Pierce?
Here.
Councilor Ridgway?
Here.
Councilor Smart?
Here.
Councilor Warner?
Here.
Supervisor Rose?
Here. Okay, once again, public hearing number 2 has to do with zoning board of appeals, or actually not zoning board of appeals, zoning public hearing fees, variance fees, and so on that are in the zoning law. And we're proposing to remove them from the zoning law and make a separate fee schedule so that we can change them from time to time as needed without having public hearings and changing our zoning. So I'm going to open the floor for comments from the public. I'll ask that you state your name and ask that you keep your comments to within 5 minutes. If you need to speak a second time, and if time allows, we'll go around again. So I'm going to open the floor for comments. Town clerk would also like your address. Yes, Marie.
As the chairman of the zoning board, I would ask that you pass this resolution. We suggested it by taking the fees out, and they could be amended without changing the zoning. And just briefly, I hope you pass it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else care to comment? Kevin.
Kevin Conley, Chairman of the Planning Board. I'd just like to state that at our meeting of February 8, 1994, the Planning Board did review these proposed amendments and the recommended adoption of these amendments. It's something that's been considered for a long time. I think Marie explained it pretty clearly. So the Planning Board also passed a resolution recommending adoption of this proposed resolution or proposed amendment.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on the amendment to the zoning fee schedule? Hearing none, I'll move to adjourn. Barbie, poll the council.
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Councilor Ridgway?
Aye.
Councilor Smart?
Aye.
Councilor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye.
Should I close it? Should I close it?
Okay, the next public hearing, number 3, for local law number 2, 1994, a local law prohibiting the storage or disposal of radioactive waste material. Once again, I'll open the floor to comment. Please state your name and address, and if you can keep your comments to 5 minutes, and if you need to speak again, if time allows, we'll go around again. So I'll open the floor now to public comment. John.
Albert, 16 Old Maple Avenue. I'm really troubled that this issue comes before the town of Volney. I think we've lost our common sense and our ability to think. I don't know what, I don't understand it. All materials in the universe contain radioactive material. Every individual in this room contains radioactive atoms in them. Now, all the food you eat contains radioactive material. If you eat a banana, if you drink milk, if you put salad dressing on your salad, you're taking in radioactive material. Everybody in here is experiencing about 10,000 atomic disintegrations per second. Does that scare you? It's a very small number compared to the number of atoms in your body. It doesn't mean very much. What we need to learn here is something about the quantities of radioactive material. As far as I understand, the issue here is the deposition of septic waste from the nuclear power plants here in Volney. Everybody's septic waste is radioactive. There isn't anybody in the world that isn't. Everybody in the world is radioactive. All things in the world are radioactive. They always have been. All organisms have evolved on this earth in a sea of radiation. Radioactivity has always been a natural part of our background and always will be. You can't change that, you never will. Just because we discovered it 100 years ago doesn't mean it wasn't here. I guess the issue is, are we dumping some inordinate quantity of radioactive material here in Volney, something out of the ordinary? And it seems clear to me that's been answered no. I've read that the dirt that we're dumping the sludge into is more radioactive than the sludge. I've read that the sludge is less radioactive than the same volume of milk that you can buy at the store. So if I go over there and dump a bottle of milk in the Volney town dump, I'm putting more radioactivity into it than I am with an equal volume of sludge. Where's our common sense? Have we lost our ability to think?
Please let the...
Salad dressing has 5,000 picocuries of radioactivity per liter. Milk has 1,200. This sludge may have 500. I don't know what it is. So I can go contaminate your landfill with a bottle of salad dressing. Far more than I will with the sludge. Do you understand that? We're contaminating our environment a lot more with chemicals we've introduced that aren't part of our natural background. Every time you drive your car, you're throwing carbon monoxide and all kinds of carcinogenic compounds into the atmosphere. They were never there before. We freely toss toxic chemicals all over our environment that were never part of our natural background. I find it incredible that this issue has come before the town of Volney. I think we need to learn a few basic facts about our environment and the science of nuclear engineering. That's what I have to say.
Thank you. Marie.
I'm going to use the microphone so I can say what you read. Maria, I kind of agree with Mr. Hall, but I find it incredible that we're here tonight doing this as well.
Can't hear you.
Maria, up on top.
I think It's on, they're on top
Hang
of the
on,
button. They're on top of the button, so flip it up towards the,
Oh.
okay, we're working.
Yeah. And I don't want to I too find it incredible, Mr. Talbot, that we're here tonight discussing this. I think it's horrible that we have to stand before you tonight and ask you to pass a local law, that a resolution that was already passed by this town board 4 years ago stating that there would be no hazardous waste, no radioactive waste in our landfill. Well, let me just tell you, back in 1980, there was a public hearing down in the Oswego County building regarding the siting of the Bristol Hill landfill. And I was the advocate that began the opposition to that landfill based on the concern that we had with Silk Road landfill that is now a hazardous waste site that holds 8,000 barrels of hazardous waste. Which, who else knows what's in there? I'm sure there's everything in that landfill. And we were told back in 1981 that we want to be rest assured, citizens of Volney, no hazardous waste will go into the Bristol Hill landfill. It is a sanitary landfill. Sanitary meaning accepting no hazardous toxic waste. Now, let me just quote County Administrator James Wright on March 6, 1981. Wright made his proposal Thursday during a meeting at the County Legislative Public Works Committee. The committee decided to introduce hazardous waste ban as a formal resolution when the full legislature meets next week. However, Mr. Wright says there's been many misunderstandings and rumors concerning the county's intentions. He told the committee that the legislature could alleviate fears on the part of those who live near the planned facility by taking a firm position now. Some of those Volney residents are prepared to take legal action. But the whole intention is to never accept any type of hazardous or toxic waste at the landfill. Now, this is what the resolution was that was passed March 17, 1981 by the legislative body. Not surprisingly, local Volney residents who feel they were harmed or misled over the Silk Road landfill have many questions concerning the shutdown, as well as the operation of the proposed new one. Sound familiar? A portion, this is the resolution that was approved. I quote, a portion of the resolution states the proposed county landfill is not, has not been designed for the storage and or disposal of toxic or hazardous waste, and this legislator hereby declares and determines as a matter of policy that the storage and or disposal of toxic or hazardous waste in the said landfill is hereby prohibited. When we asked about nuclear waste being dumped at that landfill, we too were assured that would never, ever happen, because that definitely is considered hazardous, toxic waste. So that there should be no discussion on this. This is the county's law. They passed it, the town board backed it up. Whether the people of the nuclear industry feel that it is a safe waste, that's one thing. But we were promised it would never be dumped in our sanitary landfill. This is setting a precedent for every landfill that's going to be cited all through New York State. That if you cite a landfill and you tell the citizens of that community, there will never, ever be none, zero waste. And then, under some condition with some state agency, rewrite the law or ignore it completely. And I have to thank two people that really were involved in this from the beginning, who brought this to light because of a phone call they received. And that's Howard Rose, Supervisor Rose, and the Secretary of Staff, Chris Rose. They're the ones that brought it to our attention. We had no idea that this has been going on for all these years. We were promised it would never happen. It is, and it must stop. The county cannot all of a sudden decide to alleviate from this law. Mark Lichtenstein is now in charge of solid waste. But the same people that were involved in telling us, don't worry your pretty head, we will take care of you. The landfill is a wonderful place, all types of secure liners, no leachate problem, no hazardous waste will go in. Well, this is about the third time we've caught hazardous waste going into Bristol Hill landfill. The first time was Miller Brewery. When we brought it to the county's attention and to the Miller Brewery attention, they were responsible enough to go in there and remove that waste and take it to secure landfill. And I feel the county has a responsibility to these citizens, and no wonder there's fears over landfills and fears of the way the county does business. This is just indicative of the way that this town has been treated in regards to our landfill. They have let us down. And I thank this board for passing the law tonight. I hope you pass the law. I thank you for at least bringing it to the floor for a vote. and I urge you to support this. It's a very controversial issue in this town. There's an aquifer, it's Bristol Hill Landfill. Bristol Hill Landfill is based on an aquifer. There's some wells all surrounding that land, and whether you believe nuclear waste is safe or not, it is non-allowable use in that landfill. And I don't know how anybody can argue that statement that it's safe and perfectly acceptable. It is not. Please pass this tonight.
Thank you. Yes. John, I'll come back to you after everyone's had a chance to speak, if you'd like to speak again, okay?
I don't know whether we can try to follow them or not. I understand that radioactive material can accumulate. You put it in one spot, and after a while it's going to mushroom out. I don't know whether that's so or not. But what I've got to say is, we used to use a static eliminator on printing, and if you could visualize it, it's about 3/4 of an inch square, probably 16, 18 inches long. That was radioactive. When we got done with that, we had to put it in when the use of that run out, we had to put that in a special container and ship it to New Jersey and all special carrier. This was 25, 30 years ago, I'd say. Now what's changed? I don't think that this radioactive material should be put anywhere, only in a radioactive dump.
Colleen?
My name's Colleen Scott. I live on Flood Drive in Volney. I think it's very important that you pass this law tonight. I cannot believe that anyone who has a family right now, who lives in the town of Volney, wouldn't want you to pass this law. It's so important. I saw the little thing where we made their little nuclear newsletter thing there, and why are they so worried if they mean us no harm? Why are they like encouraging people to come and give you guys a hard time? And then one real interesting thing was on the bottom of the paper was an article about Barnwell, which is a nuclear waste dump in South Carolina, and how it was going to have to close within like the next couple of years. I don't want Bristol Hill to be like that. It's bad enough what they did to us over on the Silk Road. We've got all that toxic stuff, and people had to lose their houses and everything because they couldn't live there. Well, I don't think we need to have radiated children in the town of Volney. And I really hope that you pass this law, because somebody has to make them stop this. Thank you.
James Spears, I live on Gilbert Mills Road. It wasn't too long ago, a couple of years ago, that New York State, when they were looking into sites to make a hazardous dump site in New York, because New York does have to eventually eat their own garbage. They can't be shipping it out. There's a law, federal law that says that. When different sites around the state were being looked at, Volney was passed over because of the aquifer system underneath it. The geological survey showed that it should not be considered a hazardous waste site for nuclear waste. There was a place in Scriba that fit all the requirements, and the 3 nuclear power plants were looking into that, as well as New York State was looking into that. Volney was never considered. Why it's being considered now, I don't understand.
Thank you. Cindy?
Hi, my name is Cindy Gagne, and I live in Tolton. And I'd like you to read a brief statement that I wrote tonight when I was thinking about how I could best sum up what's happening. And I have talked to many people around the United States about this problem here, including newspaper reporters and television reporters, and they are absolutely astounded. And an attorney in Washington who has won all the Agent Orange cases in Bhopal, so he is concerned about chemicals, said to me, "You ought to write a letter and put it in every newspaper in the country and tell them what's happening in your county. And he may well help us fight this. The nuclear industry is desperate to find a low-level radioactive disposal site. The NRC may well try to use this as a backdoor approach if the precedent is set when the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation approves NIMO and FITCI's applications and permits them to violate an existing law in this state. In Fitzpatrick's applications, the New York State DEC dated April 15, 1989. The topic is exemption to the law to dispose of sewage sludge. On page 4, it reads, according to existing law, a material that contains radioactivity above minimum detectable levels is considered for the purpose of regulation to be radioactive material, and the land disposal of radioactive material is prohibited in New York State, except in a secure land disposal facility, secure being defined specifically by the law. Therefore, in spite of the extremely low levels of activity in the sludge, an alternate method of disposal, that which will be required without this exemption, is to process and package the sludge and transport it for burial at the Barnwell Low-Level Nuclear Waste Dump in South Carolina. The annual cost to the authorities' customers for this method of disposal would be $440,000. And I'd like to add that NIMO, in their latest newspaper to their employees, also said that if they are denied access to Bristol Hill, that it might cost them a lot of money. They certainly didn't worry about a lot of money when they built the world's most expensive nuclear plant at $7.8 billion. Obviously, Oswego County's fine politicos, that wonderful legislative body, decided that they did not want NIMO and FITCI's nuclear waste in any county facility, including the landfill and incinerator. Perhaps they did it because it was the right thing to do. A Volney citizen, Christine Rose, was concerned and brought it to their attention. They never thought it could happen. Any nuclear waste ending up in our county landfill, never. NIMO pays the most property taxes in the county, so that must make them the most responsible to take care of their own waste, or so we thought. So now at this moment, we have David taking on Goliath. We have a county that seems receptive and wants to be creative in finding a way to accommodate these fine, responsible industries' 3 nuclear plants' radioactive human waste. The New York State DEC certainly is very attuned to finding ways to making the shoe fit even when it doesn't, or in in 1990, or so we were led to believe, into now making it fit into the no radioactive waste law. I asked the New York State DEC this winter if they would call this special radioactive waste. You see, fly ash from incinerators, which is heavily contaminated with lead, mercury, and many other heavy metals, and is hazardous waste, and not allowed in a landfill like Bristol Hill. Well, what did they do? They called the DEC, they took out their magic pen, they crossed out the word hazardous waste and put in the word special waste and made the shoe fit. It's in the landfill, though once upon a time it couldn't go in there. So no, they can't call this special radioactive waste. So how do they make the shoe fit? The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Bureau of Radiation, is now telling this county to define the term radioactive for the purpose of the law that they passed in 1990. In other words, take the amount of radioactivity, go above that limit, and allow slightly radioactive waste to go in the landfill. The DEC wants our county definition to be consistent to the DEC definition. If it differs in some way, then I was told that the NRC wants them to look elsewhere. Go to the local nuclear plants and try to define it in the same way. Use the tech specs of the environmental monitoring done by the nuke plants, the standards that they use. That's for another time. But that also says that they don't look very hard for radioactivity. What must be understood is the vulnerability to this county to nuclear waste. We already have 3 high-level nuclear waste sites in the county. That is the definition of storing high-level fuel rods at our nuclear pools at our plants. The public who fought so hard to stop the BRC law by the NRC didn't win the battle. BRC is the NRC's way of taking out the magic pen and making approximately 30% of nuclear waste no longer radioactive. How? They took out the pen and they said so. They said it's no longer radioactive. In August of 1986, in the Federal Register, the NRC stated that they could do below regulatory concern on a case-by-case basis. That law still stands. That is what the sludge issue is all about. No matter if the only low-level nuclear dump Barnwell stays open for the next 100 years, though it is thought to be closed maybe this June, but the industry is upping the ante to the South Carolina legislative body, and it may well stay open until June of 95. Then again, it may stay open beyond 95 with enough incentive. This dump is leaking just like the rest of the failed dumps in the world have done, and just like any new ones built will do. Just ask our county. Our county said, we don't want to be host to a nuclear dump. It will leak. It never ceases to amaze me that the same geological study that showed that we could build 3 nuclear plants on an earthquake fault is where we store high-level waste, yet we couldn't tolerate low-level waste. But if Barnwell shuts down, we'll be storing waste on site for 10 years. And what are they really trying to get at? The BRC law really is in effect. And whether West Valley reopens, whether Barnwell stays open for the next 10 years, the industry has adopted waste reduction. And that doesn't mean you make less waste. As nuclear plants get hotter, I'm sure Mr. Tolbert can tell you, they produce more waste. And unfortunately, according to the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, with our annual figures, Oswego County, with 3 nuclear plants, produces approximately 94 to 98% of the total curies in the state. And yet there's 2 nuclear plants down in Indian Point. But boiling water plants are much more radioactive. The DEC and the NRC finally admitted to me with all the sludges and the resins. And it cost a lot of money to dump that. They are going to take approximately 30% of the nuclear waste, and they are going to BRC it. And sludge is one of the methods they are going to use, and it is a known fact. The other is that they are going to incinerate it. So what you need to do is get this county to stop kowtowing to the nuclear industry and to define radioactive as they meant it in the beginning. No radioactivity. You are taking on the NRC, not the DEC and not the state, and that's what you have to remember. And the whole country is watching this fight now as I speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Wood. I live in Minetto, which also has a role in this problem, and we're going to deal with it next Monday night. I'd like to offer a couple of other perspectives here that might help you reach a decision not to accept this waste. I think you're on the right track. I've got a slant that might further justify that. Lead story in the New York Times Sunday magazine section was disposal of atomic waste, the Yucca Flats Mountain. And they're still playing with it. It's experimental. In this state, several years ago, a commission was formed to find sites for radioactive waste and methods for disposing of them. Today, 5 or 6 years later, we're no further ahead than we were then. I learned this from a gentleman in DEC in Albany. Since your last meeting, I've been doing a little research on this subject. He tells me that now, only now, they're working on methods for both high-level and low-level waste disposal. They're not sure yet of how to do this, okay? And once they get it done, there'll be another site selection exercise statewide to repeat what was done a few years ago. Allegheny County Portland County told them to get lost. They didn't want atomic waste there. Okay? So here we have power, and I had some experience in hydropower, about 6 years of it. Station load was 980 megawatts, so I know some things about power generation. I'm not a nuclear expert, and I can't tell you the difference between millicuries and microcuries per liter and all that stuff that the earlier speaker spoke about. But it's the principle of the thing that concerns me. The people generating this waste are being a little less than responsible in figuring out ways to dispose of it. They're dragging their feet. And until people such as yourselves and the Minetto Board shut the door on this and force them to start looking at this seriously, nothing's going to happen. You heard the figures, $440 to Barnwell, $87,000 to Minetto. It's an economic decision. Okay, this state has also adopted, they swung from the NIMBY principle, not in my backyard, to the RB principle, our backyard. We learned this in Minetto. We would love to have had that Columbia Mills stuff shipped out to Model City, the western part of the state. Oh no, that's much too much money. You've got to swallow it yourselves. You fellas generated it, so, you know, store it there, a monument, a cemetery, something that can't be used for anything else. Okay? So, my point is, let the atomic generating plants swallow this stuff and take care of it on site. What's done at Minetto? A very simple thing. It's a two-train system at Minetto, a disposal plant, and one train is used entirely for the atomic energy human waste disposal sludge, which, as the gentleman said earlier, is pretty low level. But as we heard a couple of weeks ago in this room, the long-term effects of low-level radioactivity, the jury's still out. There's genetic effects and things pyramid. The low-level radiation, true, you don't get much today, but you get some more tomorrow, some more the next day, and it concentrates in vital organs of the body. So there's some question marks, some risks. And why accept the risk if you don't have to? And ladies and gentlemen, my point is you don't have to. They can build a settling tank on site and dry this stuff and bag it. In fact, they can spread it on the ground on site. There's room enough out there. Or they can put it through the settling tank, dry it, ship it to Volney, Bristol Hill, which, according to design, is a tight site. There's supposed to be no leakage from there. Okay? So we'll assume it's tight. And if it's this low level, if it leaks anyway, it can't hurt anybody. The gentleman said earlier, it's so low level it can't possibly hurt you. So why worry if the site does leak a little bit? Okay? How much would this cost? Now we come to the bottom line. Well, the same gentleman that gave me these figures said, you know, we ran this through. Your idea is pretty good, there would, but it would cost $500,000 to build this settling tank. Well, you know what a settling tank is, a sheet steel. It's not that big, and the steel, fabricated steel at 30, 40 cents a pound can't possibly cost $500,000. I said, what's the hooker in this thing? Oh, well, he says, everything out there has to be designed to withstand earthquakes, bombs, God knows what, every man-made hazard, every natural hazard. I said, you mean everything from a doghouse to the nuclear containment vessel has to withstand an earthquake? He said, that's it. So, here's what's needed. Variances to codes are granted. You grant them yourselves. What we need to do is shut the door on this stuff, let them get the variances, let them put the settling tank in, spread it on the ground, and if you still want to take it anyway in your tight containment, structure at Bristol Hill, take it. But my point is, with the modern technology and the geotextile that's available, and the cutoff walls that can be built and everything else, let them build it right on site, store it there, spread it on the ground in that safe, tight structure, and it's not going to go anywhere. Help to close this landfill to radioactivity. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine?
Christine Rose, 5 Rose Lane, Volney. I have a couple of things I want to say. First of all, we've heard a lot about natural occurring radioactivity, and I think we all are aware there is natural occurring radioactivity. I don't work for the power plant. I'm not an expert, but I do have a document here from the power plant from Fitzpatrick. And one of the things they mention is, regarding this particular sludge, the sludge contains an annual basis, on an annual basis, approximately 120 microcuries of activity subject to regulation and 280 microcuries of naturally occurring radioactivity. So granted, yes, there is natural radioactivity. We aren't concerned with that, but it admits right in here there is regulated radioactivity. As I've stated a couple of times previously, our county passed a law that said no radioactivity, 0. If we let them put a little in, and it was an accident apparently, load slipped in, how do we know that can't happen again? If we allow them to put some in, then how do we know they won't exceed that amount? What really upsets me is the fact that the county passed this, and I think, in my opinion, they knew at the time that radioactivity was coming into the landfill. I have 2 articles here where the 3 power plants said due to public perception, they would never consider putting BRC waste in the landfill. These articles were dated 1990. I'm finding out through the DEC, Freedom of Information, that they had been doing it since 87, 88. They were doing it while they were saying that they would never do it. I think what they were hoping was they'd never get caught. I hope the town board passes this law, and I hope they don't do what the county did, which is just pass it to patronize a few outspoken people against it. But regarding nuclear energy, I am not that familiar with it. As I said, I'm not an expert. Whether you like it or you hate it, this is a sanitary landfill, and we do not want it in our landfill. The county has also gone on record in the past stating that if someone tried to force it on us, we'd close our facilities down. Well, I haven't heard them say that this time, but that's the statement they made. Also, regarding the Bristol Hill landfill and the tight containment, if Mr. Mr. Wood is ever interested, my husband went into the landfill a few years ago. We have videotape of leakage in the landfill, and it is documented on videotape. Even the EPA says all landfills leak. And this one, even though it's a new landfill, does have leaking in some areas. So I just hope the board supports this law.
Thank you. Anyone else? Charlie?
It would be nice, very nice, Charlie Smart, town of Volney. It would be very nice if we could say, well, let's be reasonable, and there are certain amounts of radioactivity that are not dangerous, and if they were there, they're not going to hurt anything, and we need to be able to take care of them. There are some very serious problems with taking that approach. As a matter of fact, Mr. Tolbert talked about the fact that, we're not concerned about toxic waste, but we are. And paint, batteries, and many other household items are considered toxic waste and are not allowed in the Bristol Hill landfill. A county law prohibits radioactive materials in the landfill. We have a real problem with one term here, and the term that's bandied about a lot is low-level radioactive waste. What people do not realize is low-level radioactive waste does not refer to the radioactivity of the materials or how much radioactivity is in them. We are talking about perhaps very low-level wastes here. But low-level is a descriptive term, and it actually refers more to how the radioactivity in the substance is generated. In fact, some very, very hot items from being exposed to radioactivity, be they parts of a nuclear generator or clothing that has been worn in a contaminated area, are considered low-level waste, even though the radioactivity can be extremely intense and of a very long life. Now, I spoke to an environmental engineer recently, and my concern is that, from talking to them, the way the regulatory agencies cast about and find a new dump site is to look for a place that has already taken some radioactive waste, whether they be low level or not. And the theory is that it is better to add additional nuclear waste in a community that has already accepted some waste than it is to contaminate a new and relatively pristine site. The Bristol Hill site sits over an aquifer. There are 3 nuclear plants in Oswego County, all of them in Scriba. Scriba already has the contamination from the radioactive plant, from the nuclear plants. The high-level waste of the fuel rods is stored there. Scriba also receives the largesse of the tax base from the nuclear plant. When they close a nuclear plant, they don't cart that material somewhere else, they cap it. The Fermi plant in Chicago, which had a nuclear meltdown many years ago, was simply contained in concrete, much as Chernobyl is today. We cannot, unfortunately, say, let's be reasonable and let's let this very, very low-level waste into our landfill, because by doing that, we've taken the first step on the road to becoming the next Barnwell, which is set to close.
Thank you. Jim?
Pastor Jim Hemman from the Bristol Hill Church. I am also concerned about the low-level radioactive waste. I received this report about the Silk Road landfill on how the waste has been identified as hazardous. It's been re-designated as hazardous, but yet we're still getting it dumped here because the EPA has made an exception to dispose it temporarily as a non-hazardous disposal on a batch-by-batch base. I'm concerned if you say we won't accept low-level radioactive waste, they'll say, well, it's low-level radioactive waste. How are we going to stop it? What are we going to do? From what I understand, the sludge could be when they wash off their uniforms. I mean, if their uniforms are radioactive to protect the people, I mean, that radioactive has got to go someplace. If it's going in this sludge, we're getting it. Over 10 years ago, I pleaded, do not put a dump behind my church. Who would like to have a dump behind their church? Now we're here tonight, over 10 years later, wondering, are we going to have low-level radioactive waste? I applaud you for this resolution, and I pray that we don't get any of it.
Thank you. Kevin?
My name's Kevin Connolly. I don't know if I'm here to speak out in favor or against the local law. I do have a couple of questions that I'd like to ask. First of all, there was a letter in the Oswego Valley News tonight, which I guess you can say was biting to some extent. And there are a couple things raised, and I'd just like to clear up a couple questions. As I understand it, the Silk Road landfill originally, am I correct? Jess, you would probably know, originally was not a county landfill, is that correct?
That's correct.
The county took it over
That's right.
when it was because of all the toxic waste problems.
No, the county was running it when the toxic waste went in. The DEC issued the permit. County workers were there.
Okay, who owned the landfill? That's the only thing I'm not...
They took it over from the 4 or 5 municipalities that were running it to make it bigger, to make it countywide.
Okay, I was just wondering about
It
that.
was,
Sure how-
well, it was sort of like a bailout also for cost-wise.
Yeah, to some extent, that's what I understood, to some extent, that was the case as well. But when it was first put there, I just said, the Bristol Hill is definitely a county landfill, the incinerator is definitely a county facility, but as I understood it, at least at first, they did not put that original Silk Road landfill there.
No, they didn't. There was 5 communities that developed that.
Okay, I was just wondering. I'm certainly not in favor, I have never been a big advocate of nuclear power, and I've never been I've read most of the minutes involving the town and the Bristol Hill landfill, and I know what the town went through regarding that. On the same hand, I think a local law is very important, and a local law should be entered with a certain amount of research and a certain amount of clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish and what it is intended to do, and will it accomplish what its ends when it's all said and done. I think a lot of things have been brought out. We've talked about a lot of different types of radioactivity, a lot of different levels of radioactivity, and just listening to different people speak, I think there's a lot of different perceptions as to exactly what's going in the landfill, what kind of wastes are going in there, that there's been low-level waste going there for a long time, or there hasn't been, or there's going to be, and I think that as much has been said as to what's going on, a lot of questions have been raised as to what is going on. And regarding the passage of a law banning radioactive waste from the town of Volney, and you have been very clear, and I think your intention is certainly admirable, you are banning any kind of radioactive waste. I think that some research, if it hasn't already been done, needs to be done, because when you're going to pass a local law, I think there are some questions that need to be answered. When the town is dealing with a variance, there are certain tests that have to be met. When the town is amending its zoning ordinance, the town has to determine that there's a need and that this will correct a problem. And I guess there's 4 questions that I have that I think should be clearly answered, and at least in the minds of the town board members, before we pass this law. And one, my first question would be, has a serious ongoing problem been clearly identified and documented? Is there documentation stating that what you're concerned about is going on at this time, and has been going on at the landfill? And I think that's the first question. 2, are there any other options, short of passing a local law, that could possibly bring about a solution to the problem? Is the local law the only thing that we can do? I raised a question a couple weeks ago. Would it be worthwhile for people from the town to meet with these Oswego County resource recovery people to at least get a clear understanding and documentation as to what actually has been going there? What level of radiation are we talking about? Where is this coming from? How many loads are there? Was this a one-time or a twice occurring incident? Is the town attentive to our concerns, or are they ignoring our concerns? But has there been contact made before we've taken the step of deciding to take this action, which is a local law? The third question I would have, is it clear that the local law, as written, will correct what has been identified as an ongoing problem? You've identified a problem, I would presume. You've decided that there's no other alternative but a local law to correct the problem. Will this local law do that? How are we going to do that? Are we going to station people there? Or do we have to work with the county again, because they're the people who, I guess, would be on site making a determination whether or not this material is good or bad or radioactive or non-radioactive. Again, if we pass a local law, what have we accomplished? If we are not in any way working to some extent or in a cooperative nature with those people who are on site. We don't have a police force to station at the gate and check all the shipments that go in there. The fourth question I have is, could passage of the local law result in some other desirable impact, in some other undesirable impacts not directly related to the problem which the local law is intended to resolve? If we pass this local law, have we really checked into it enough to make sure that there may not be some side impact that we haven't considered that could come into play here? My concern, and I could be way off base, but as we all know, or as most people should know, there's plans for a hospital in this town. This is a major hospital. A major hospital has x-rays. A major hospital deals with radioactive isotopes. A major hospital, I don't think there's a family in this country that hasn't experienced cancer in their lives. One of the major means of dealing with cancer is through radiation therapy. X-rays involve radioactive material of some type or another. Radioactive isotopes are a major means to use to determine the effectiveness of treatment. Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but is it possible, and it's something I think should be looked into, could we, by passing this law, be causing some other problem that we never even thought about, which is affecting the possibility of this hospital locating in the township in coming years? I don't know. I don't have the answers to these questions. I think that your intentions are admirable. I certainly am not a supporter of radioactive waste being located in the landfill. The only question I have is, we've gone very quickly here from thinking about it to considering a law, and these four questions that I've raised, I think are questions that should be answered or reviewed or thought about before we take the final step of passage of the local law. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin. Alan?
My name's Alan Kester. I live on County Route 45. A couple of Saturdays ago, I picked up the Post-Standard and read an editorial on this whole situation. I was surprised to see her name mentioned in there. Now, they weren't very nice to you. They called you a politician. Twice they called you a politician. The disturbing thing about this, though, is the editorial acted as if there was one little truckload with one little, however many microcuries in it. And why are we, what did they call us? Hysterical, groundless paranoia, groundless fear, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think it's quite that simplistic. I don't believe that there was just one truckload. Chris was citing some information from them on the total amount of radiation that they know was dumped out there, and I believe that they gave figures for 2 years. Is that not correct?
Well, we have figures for more than 2, but I happen to have the 1992 disposal report, cobalt-60, which is a regulated isotope, even in a small amount, 6.60 microcuries. This was in 92. In 90, cobalt-60, 11.937. Now, if it was 2 separate years, I don't know.
Is that the amount that they admit that they put there in the Bristol?
This is the amount in the sewage that was shipped up for off-site disposal.
Was that shipped to Bristol Hill?
Yes, in the long run. It went to Minetto, then to Bristol Hill.
So we're not talking about one truckload here. They may want you to believe that. The gentleman who was talking about the radioactivity in milk and salad dressing, I see he's left. I didn't hear all of his remarks, so I don't know. I don't know if he was suggesting that we send our salad dressing down to South Carolina. I don't know. The thing about this is that I believe there was more than one truckload. And if it was, even if it were just a small amount, I really think that that's immaterial. And I think that Kevin has come up with some good questions here. And Mr. Wood and the other people here have raised some questions. But the thing that disturbs me more than anything about this is not the level that they put in there, it's the way they did it. The way they did it. They knew that they were in violation of a county law when they did this. And they're just saying, too bad. We're going to do it because we're saving $400,000. And I believe that what Chris said was true in that letter that she read, the request that they made, they did this for purely economic reasons. And that's fine. That's fine. I have no problems with it. Trying to cut costs and reduce our electric bills up here. But I think that we have to remember that some of this stuff that they put out there may be there 10,000 years from now. 10,000 years from now. Now the Sphinx was built about, correct me if I'm wrong, Reverend, I don't know if you know anything about the Sphinx, but this was not even 5,000 years ago. Is that correct? So, and the Sphinx seems long ago to us, but this material, whatever they put out there, some of it may be there twice as long ago as the Sphinx was built from now. And there may be houses over there. I don't know if they're going to have houses then, but whatever it is, we have to be aware that what we're doing out here is going to have, and what we do here tonight in relation to this law is going to have long ramifications, long after we're dead, buried, forgotten, and the world isn't even the same as it is now. The important thing I want to get across is that they broke the law. They knew they were breaking the law. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they did it for economic reasons. I don't know what sort of communication there is between NIMO, the DEC, back and forth. They write these letters to each other requesting, can we dump this here, can we dump this there? Did they ask anybody up here? Did you get a copy of this request? Were you asked to comment on this? No, I don't know. It seems to me that this is something between NIMO and the DEC. I'm not going to talk too much about the fox guarding the chickens, but if NIMO is the one producing it, if NIMO is the one who determines how much radioactivity is in there and whether it is low level enough to be dumped out behind Reverend Hinman's church, I'm not sure that's the way it should be done. I would add that to one of your questions, Kevin, about who's the one who determines what goes there. I don't think it should be NIMO. I don't think it should be NIMO. There's some sort of adversity here between the county law and the law that you're suggesting and things like that. And I would suggest to everybody here that the adversity started with them. We are the ones who have been sinned against. They are the ones who are sinning. Well, whether this is passed tonight, I don't know. Like I said, I agree with Kevin. This is going to take a lot of. We have to look at a lot of things here. I don't know if I decide that I need a new smoke detector at home, if I can take it out there and say, this is a smoke detector, I'm throwing it in the trash. It contains 0.09 million microcuries of americium.
All smoke detectors because they're radioactive.
I know they're radioactive.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know if I can do that.
There's a law against it.
And it's called county law?
Yes.
Well, what difference does that make?
You can't break it, they can.
Exactly. I wonder what the penalty is if I knowingly violate that county law. What's the penalty? Is there one? I don't know.
Yes,
But
there's a fine.
has there been any fine levied against NIMO for this?
That's what we're aware of.
Well, I would just say that there are a lot of questions here, but the one that disturbs me the most is the way they did it. They're saying, we did it, too bad, it's going to stay there. And I agree with the people here who say, oh, now that some of it's there, what's wrong with putting just a little more? We only have one more truckload, and then next week it's one more truckload, and then in June when they shut down Barnwell, whether they keep it open or not, I know it's scheduled to be shut down. When they shut that down, then what are they going to do with the stuff that they absolutely positively have to ship down there? Well, look, we got these nice people in Volney. They don't mind if a camel gets its nose under the tent, and the next thing you know, you got the camel in the tent. And we may find that there is a slightly contaminated landfill in our town, and that, well, let's just contaminate it a little more. I think that, I don't know if you're going to pass this tonight, but I think that this is something that I would hope that something comes out of this that prevents them from doing what they did, and I think that we should get our lawyers, you know. They violated the law. And I don't like what the county's doing. They're dancing, tap dancing around here. They're going to change the law, like somebody said, to fit the crime. Well, that's not very nice of them either. I'm sorry to get so passionate about this, but it makes me mad. I hope whatever happens, that we can keep them from doing what they've been doing. And I think that we should get some damages out of this. Thank you.
Ma'am?
My name is Marlene Schneider. I'm a registered nurse clinician, and I live on Maple Ave in Oswego. I was sad to see some of the small children had to leave, but I'm speaking for my grandchildren as well. They don't live here, thank goodness, but my feeling is that low radioactive waste and exposure length of time has really never been determined. I'm like Keith, who tried to ask all the questions as a truth seeker, and it's very difficult to get any answers. However, I can tell you one answer. That low-level radioactive exposure over a length of time, we don't know how much yet. There are cluster studies going on in children that develop leukemia. It actually mutates the cells. Now, high-level radioactivity kills the cells, as most of you know who have had people in radiotherapy for cancer treatment or chemotherapy. Those cells are dead, they can't change. However, the low-level radioactivated cell mutates and does all sorts of things that we don't know about, but one thing for sure, it lowers levels of immunity to diseases. And you can find out that if you talk to people at upstate, it's not easy to get MDs to live in this area that are knowledgeable about low-level radioactivity because it's not been defined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Joyce?
Joyce Turner, Volney. I think that the law should be passed. Bristol Hill landfill is a sanitary landfill, and I think it should remain one. We've already got enough low-level radioactive waste in there that shouldn't even be there, and I don't think we should be getting any more in, and I hope the board does pass a law to stop it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, since we've been around once, Charlie, I'll give you another opportunity.
I just wanted to address a few issues that Kevin brought up. Documentation has been provided through Freedom of Information that low-level waste has been left there and that the sludge did contain it. The problem is any permission granted with knowledge that this is occurring is considered acceptance of the material, and therefore prejudices your case against having higher levels of material put there later. That's how they determine where to put the dumps. The local law, Kevin wanted to know what it was for. The DEC is not what many people think the DEC is. They are not an organization set up like the FBI that goes in to ferret out bad doing, find these culprits and bring them to justice. The DEC looks at what they are required to look at by the law. A local law here requires the DEC to take a harder look at the materials that are dumped in the landfill and to take a stronger position against their placement there. The local law says the community is against it. It requires the DEC to act harsher than they would act otherwise. That's the purpose of a local law. Hospital waste are also not allowed, Kevin, in sanitary landfills.
I'm saying we may not be able to have the hospital at all.
No, Kevin, by law.
I don't know.
No, Kevin, no, by law, they're not allowed there.
No, but if we ban
Okay,
it...
address the board, Charlie, please.
Wait a second.
Address the board, please.
They also have to be shipped to low-level waste sites. They are not allowed in landfills. Okay, so that's not really an issue with the hospital. And so that, I just wanted to address those few things.
Thank you. Kevin, you want to speak?
Yeah, just like I said, all I think I'm saying is that I think some research might be important. Let's say the hospital has an incinerator on site, which I think a lot of hospitals have for their, I don't know. Okay, I'm just saying something should be checked into. One last question I wanted to bring up, I'm sorry I forgot to mention it earlier. We were looking through the, as you know, we've been getting together trying to update any changes in our zoning amendments. And what we did find is that there is presently a section in our zoning ordinance which bans radioactive wastes. Now, I'm not sure whether it will be applicable in this case or not. Okay, I don't know. I know that there is a section in our zoning ordinance. I don't have the book with me, otherwise I would have told you the page number. But it's in there. It may only apply to a certain zoning district, but there is a section there that bans, I believe, hazardous, toxic, and radioactive wastes. It might just be worthwhile so that we're not, again, being repetitious or something, or maybe it would be the best thing to do. Just might want to check into that. Like I said, it may not be applicable, it may not do what you want to do, but there is something there now that was passed, I believe, several years ago. Thank you.
Thank you. Marie?
I would just like to respond to Kevin saying there's also in our zoning, it says no landfills, and that was in our zoning ordinance. When this landfill went in, we brought that issue up and it said, too bad, town, we're the county, we can supersede you, we don't care what your zoning says. The zoning has no teeth with the county. A local law is the only way that's going to stop this with the town board. And my only other request is if you do pass this, as Dr. John Strutt said, request a public hearing by the DEC. Don't stop here.
Thank you. Christine?
I almost forgot what I wanted to say. Regarding the town board, this isn't an issue that just came up a week ago. This has been an ongoing issue. I think the board has done its homework. I do not think that they just decided, oh, we're going to jump on a bandwagon. They made a resolution 4 years ago. The reason they didn't make a law was the county made the law, but they made the resolution to back the county. Well, now the county's abusing their own law and has from day one, as I said, in my opinion. And I think they've done their homework. All the documentation that I have gotten, that other people have gotten in this room, we have shared with the board. And it's not just hearsay, it's actual documentation. A lot of it is the words right from the nuke plants, admitting what they didn't want us to really know, and we have to write and wait for weeks for the information to come to us. And then as far as the public hearing, that's what I wondered if you could read the law, because I didn't grab a copy of it. And also, has the DEC contacted the town yet? Because the DEC is going to set up a public hearing, and they do have to notify the town. If they might not put it in the paper so the public knows about it, but the town should be getting a letter as to when there will be a public hearing. I want to say one more thing. In the past, the nuclear plants were given an exemption without having to file any documents requesting it. They now have to file applications. And when a number of us were contacting the DEC, they had received the applications from the nuke plants. And I do believe because of us contacting them, that's what put a halt to it at the moment. I think otherwise they would have been given the permission. But right now, the DEC does have the applications. They were sent back to all 3 nuclear plants because they were incomplete. And we have been told there's going to be a public hearing. We have not heard when. And also, maybe my husband should say this, but the DEC did have a meeting on this issue behind closed doors, and we were out of town. And all you see is Howard Rose did not attend the meeting. Well, I wasn't even invited, and I think I should have been. But we didn't even know about it until the day we came back. And we're very willing to work with the DEC and the county, but you notice they're not here. And Kevin, we have invited them publicly, and they won't even respond to us. So as far as cooperation goes, that's a two-way street.
Also, Howard wasn't available. I called them before that meeting. They said no one but the supervisor could go.
Just for clarification, did anybody get a copy of this logo? Did anybody pick it up at the town hall this week? Okay, are you the only one that has one? Does anyone else have a copy?
Resolution number 94-89.
Is it the whole thing typed out in the resolution?
Looks like it's section 1, section 2, I believe so.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly read it before I go any further here, just in case someone didn't get a copy of it. It says, radioactive waste material prohibited, section 1, definitions, as used herein, the following definitions shall apply. A, radioactive waste material. Any waste material, including municipal or industrial sludge, contaminated with or containing radioactivity, classified or unclassified, including any such waste material deemed to be below regulatory concern, BRC. Section 2, the temporary or permanent storage, deposit, or disposal of any radioactive waste material upon or under any land or in any structure, building, or area located within the town of Volney is prohibited. Section 3, in addition to any other enforcement remedies provided by law, any person, firm, corporation, or other entity violating this law shall be fined not less than $300 nor more than $500 for each offense, and a separate offense shall be deemed committed on each day during or on which a violation occurs or continues. That's the local law that we have before us tonight. Yes, sir.
Delaying action on this exposes you to a further risk in this form. The people that decide what's approved or not is DEC. And at Minetto, there's no means of testing what's coming in. Neither is there any means at Bristol Hill. And guess who tests it?
Yeah.
The originators, 9 Mile Point and Fitzpatrick. I don't have to review what we read in the press. The number of shutdowns, the number of safety violations, the number of fines, if that generates confidence in what they're doing out there, I guess I've been reading the wrong papers. The other thing is DEC. I've lived long enough to remember when their two areas of concern were strictly lands and forests and fishing game. They did a whale of a job. The campsites were well maintained, game laws were enforced, there was a pheasant program, and the forest preserve had rangers, fire towers inspected, everything was great. Then what happened? Air, water, and soil pollution, the whole agency exploded. You got a room full of bureaucrats on Wolf Road and another one on Erie Boulevard. They're understaffed, they're underfunded, and they're overworked. And so you have a level of trust here. Those are the people that you have to trust. These kinds of things, and we found it out in Minetto, are not getting the level of attention, the level of skill of people dealing with them that they demand. And you've heard some of the risks involved, and some of the risks are unknown. My point is, there's a level of trust here. We're at the mercy of the approval agency, we're at the mercy of the shipping agency. If they make a mistake, we've had it. I don't think you should delay.
Thank you. I have time for a couple more, Alan.
My name's Alan Kessler. I'll be a little briefer. What Chris said, what Charlie said, brought up some points that I had slipped my mind. The first was that the editorial in the Syracuse paper was castigating you for not attending the closed-door meeting, which I don't think that you're into closed-door meetings anyhow. But the DEC wanted to have this behind closed doors. You were invited, but declined to attend, I believe, for that reason. I don't know. The other thing is that I don't know if there's a state law in New York, but there are some state laws in some states that once the waste is, quote, in a place, it cannot be moved. Doesn't matter whether it's supposed to be there or not. If it's there, it stays there. And some of the Midwestern states have that law. I don't know if that's a New York State law. The other thing that I want to emphasize is what Chris said, that the requests that they had to make after they couldn't as blatantly disobey the county law as they wanted to, the requests they made to DEC were, in fact, not approved by DEC. They were returned. We should remember that. The DEC stopped them then and said, no, I suppose it's sitting up there now. The other thing is, as I recall, Charlie jogged my memory here, a fellow from the DEC was out here about a month ago or so, and somebody asked him, it may have been you, Howard, it may have been somebody in the audience, it may have been any one of the board members. The question was, what can we do? And as I recall, he said, pass a local law. Was that his recommendation? That was the recommendation of the gentleman from the DEC, and, you know, that's good enough for me.
Jim?
First of all, when you talk about containment of any kind of radioactive waste here, I would like to remind everybody what happened at the landfill, that all the leachate was supposed to be accumulated in these leachate tanks in the landfill. Well, in the spring of the year, they couldn't take it out. And as Howard has on tape, they dug out a pond so that the leachate could run in the pond. When the pond filled up, they had it running into the swamp. This is what they call containment. The other thing is, looking at your law here, I would urge this board to up those fines. 300 to 500, it means nothing to them. Look at the amount of money they're paying Minetto to take care of that waste. I mean, this means nothing to them. I would urge you to up them.
Okay, quickly, Cindy.
Okay, I just wanted to say that it's every shipment that's radioactive. I've talked to people around the country. It's bioaccumulation. If you want to know, the DEC had a teleconference in Oswego in October, and I was the only citizen there, and it was how they were going to build a safe dump. Right. No one in this state's believed them so far. And anyway, Niagara, Mohawk, and Fitzpatrick people were talking afterwards. And it was very interesting because I didn't know about the situation in this county. And they said, do you know what the biggest problem to worker exposure every day is? It's cobalt-60. And the cobalt comes from the steel that becomes radioactive when the ionizing radiation hits it. And we're working with Crucible to reduce the amount of radioactivity. So I called Crucible up the next day and they said, yes, that's true. And wherever you have cobalt, you have iron, because iron's in the steel. It's to make it stronger, and that becomes iron 58 and 59. And also there's zinc and there's manganese. Manganese 54, and I believe it has 8 electrons on it, so it's like 8 fingers. It bonds with anything. And it is from the crud from inside the reactors. When plants get very old, they let the pipes leak up to 10 gallons a minute. It's simply the workers accumulating this in their organs, and what the body doesn't accumulate is sloughed off. And it is in the sinks, the showers, the toilets, and it's when they wash the floors. Cobalt-60 is tracked throughout the plant. Every shipment is radioactive. I suppose they had to say one shipment because they had to ask for the exemption to the law. Now, I just wanted to say that in talking to some people in Ohio that now have 375,000 yards of cobalt-60 in their community in Ohio. And I said, what should I tell the Volney Town Board? This is a place where they manufacture the cobalt-60, the radiochemical, the radioisotope. They said, tell them that in 20 years, we didn't know this was happening. And according to the NRC, all the tests were being followed. It was being monitored correctly every month. There were no problems, all rules and regulations. But lo and behold, 20 years later, guess what they discovered? And they said, the NRC said, we don't know how it got there. And they said, if the Volney Town Board needs convincing, have them call the community up around Cahoga Springs, Ohio, and they will tell them what's happening. Don't believe them. And very briefly, in Mr. Wood's statement, when he said the industry should take their own waste, I want to remind you, Mr. Wood, that when you put it on land out at 9 Mile, it doesn't stay on the land. It also runs off-site. Radioactive particles go through anything. They have been trying for years to site dumps all over the country, Mr. Wood. Even the Native Americans won't buy this one. No one wants it. But we can't suggest that the nuclear plants also take it, because you're asking the fox to get, the guards the hen house, we're asked to trust them. And it's just not going to work. And in terms of Kevin, about the hospitals, the Siting Commission got very clever and told the people in Cortland and Allegheny County that if you don't let us build a dump, then Grandma won't be able to get her radiation treatments. And in fact, the hospitals are not going to use the next nuclear dump because their isotopes die on site. They don't inject us with isotopes that last for 3 billion years. They die off in a matter of a couple hours.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I so move.
Second.
Second.
Barbie, poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway? Aye. Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. I'm going to ask for a 5-minute recess before we continue with our regular scheduled town board meeting. Is everyone ready? Ready and do it. Okay. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled town board meeting to order. Barb, let the record show that the same members of the board are present. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the January 13th, 1994 public hearing on zoning amendment regarding towers, resolution 94-61. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Do we have any additions or corrections? None? Okay, Barbara, you poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Next, we have the minutes of the January 13th, 1994 public hearing in regards to zoning amendments in agricultural and residential zones, resolution 94-62. I'll move it.
Second.
Do we have any additions or corrections? Okay, Barbie, poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Next, we have the minutes of the January 13th, 1994 regular town board meeting, resolution 94-63. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any corrections or additions? Barbara, you poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. The minutes of the January 18th, 1994 special town board meeting, resolution 94-64. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbara, you poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. The minutes of the January 26, 1994 special town board meeting, resolution 94-65. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbara, you poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. The minutes of the February 2nd, 1994 special town board meeting, resolution 94-66. I'll move it.
I'll second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbara, you poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Council Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. The minutes of the February 10th, 1994 public hearing in regards to local law number 1, residency requirements, resolution 94-82. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Let's see, minutes of the February 10th, 1994 public hearing in regards to the EDZ application, 94-83. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Minutes of the February 10th, 1994 regular town board meeting, resolution 94-84. I'll move it.
I'll second
Any corrections or additions? I have one correction, and I believe it's just a typo. Under the highway account vouchers number 10 through 31, it should be $115,550.31. The one is a hyphen, or a little quotation mark there, so I believe that's just a typo. I'll make that correction. Are there any others? Barb, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Next is the minutes of the February 24th, 1994 special town board meeting, resolution 94-85. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? I have one addition. Let's see, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. In the fifth paragraph down, it says, Counselor then made a motion to reconsider the EDZ proposal. I believe that was Counselor Warner, and we need to put his name in there. That's all I have. Does anybody have any other corrections or additions? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Last but not least, February 25th, 1994 special town board meeting, resolution 94-86. I'll move it.
Second.
Any corrections or additions? Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
I abstain. I was not present.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Next is resolution 94-87. Move that voucher numbers 97 through 140, general fund, in the amount of $14,462.64, and vouchers numbered 32 through 51, highway fund, in the amount of $16,871.48, be approved, and the supervisor authorized to pay same from funds. Would someone like to move that?
I'll move it. Second.
Hey, Barbie, poll the council.
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rules.
Aye. Okay, under communications. We received a letter from church and community workers. It says, Dear Mr. Rose, Thursday, March 24th has been designated as Hunger Awareness Day in the state of New York. Communities across the New York State have planned local observances to call attention to the problem of hunger as it impacts on our own local communities. The Church and Community Workers Program and the Fulton Community Food Network have planned a series of activities to highlight hunger awareness in the Fulton community on that day, in which you are cordially invited to participate. Catholic Charities Food Pantry will be open for tours every half hour from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. at 365 West 1st Street. There will be a photo opportunity at the pantry at 11:30 a.m. Salvation Army Food Pantry and Soup Kitchen will also be open from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Persons interested in volunteering to assist with lunch at the Soup Kitchen may contact Lieutenant Gerald. Lunch preparations begin around 10:30. Servers are needed between 12 o'clock noon and 1 o'clock p.m. If you are interested in participating in one of these activities, please call the Lieutenant at 593-8442. A photographer will be present for photos at 12 noon. The Senior Nutrition Program prepares meals in the municipal building, and drivers deliver the meals to homebound individuals. There is room for 1 or 2 individuals who wish to ride with the drivers to deliver the meals. Please call Edie Chrissy at 592-7924, 10 a.m. through 1 p.m., or 593-1458 at other times. A photo opportunity will be arranged for individuals who are interested. We hope that you will be able to join us for one of these events. On Friday, March 25th, Carol Hunn will interview a panel of our local hunger experts at 10 a.m. on WZZZ Radio. Sincerely, Sister Phyllis Tierney. She has also attached a proclamation she wants us to read this evening, which is one of our resolutions. If anyone is interested in helping out with this, if you want to see me afterwards, I'll give you those phone numbers again and the names. The next correspondence comes from the Oswego County Government Committee. Dear Mr. Rose and Ms. Smart, the Oswego County Government Committee is proceeding with an investigation of the Widewater Strip Mall development in Volney, New York, and the transactions surrounding that development at your request. In order to adequately conduct our investigation, it is necessary for you to appear before the committee and set forth your specific allegations as to what transactions you believe involve a conspiracy and present whatever documentary evidence you have in your possession supporting these allegations. The next scheduled meeting of the General Government Committee is on March 3rd, 1994 at 4 p.m. The committee invites you to attend this meeting to set forth your allegations. If you cannot point to a specific transaction which you believe constitutes a conspiracy, and if you do not have any documentary evidence to support your allegations, please advise the committee of such in writing prior to March 2nd, 1994, so a determination may be made whether or not an appearance by you is required. Thank you for your anticipated cooperation. I responded to that letter, which I'll read to you. Dear Mr. Russell, it was sent to me by William T. Russell, Jr., who's a legislator, I believe, from Williamstown. I'm in receipt of your letter dated February 24th requesting my presence at your next scheduled meeting of the General Government Committee on March 3rd at 4 p.m., and or a letter of specific proof of the Town of Volney Board's allegations. As we discussed on the phone the week before last, the Board has no hard evidence of wrongdoing, and the Board is not and has not posed any specific claim or allegation of wrongdoing or conflict. The Town Board does feel, however, that there exists sufficient facts and circumstances of a reasonably suspicious nature so as to warrant an investigation in order to determine the existence or non-existence of such wrongdoing or conflict. In general, the facts, among others, that form the basis for the Board's request for an investigation are as follows. Bruce Clark was co-owner of the mall property. Bruce Clark is co-petitioner in the annexation of said property. Bruce Clark represents the County of Oswego as legal counsel. Bruce Clark serves on numerous county and community committees that have the power to approve and direct funding. The determination is the County of Oswego's and the New York State Commission of Investigations. Concerning the Industrial Development Agency of Oswego County, I will relate to you a few specific questions raised by my board relative to this situation. Why did the IDA lease agreement with Widewaters Associates include a section for cooperation with the annexation of Volney property into the city of Fulton? Why were these agreements made a few days before the end of 1993 when new legislation requiring public hearings was to go into effect? Why did Bruce Clark notarize his own signature on that agreement? I would strongly ask that you refer to your own local law, number 4 of 1990, Oswego County Ethics and Disclosure Law, when making a determination of our concerns. Thank you for assisting us in this effort. Now, I read these two letters because it was reported in the paper that I refused to come to their first two meetings. And just to set the record straight, the first two meetings they asked me to come to, they asked me a couple of days in advance of the meeting that they scheduled, and didn't ask me if it could be a convenient time for me. As it turned out, those 2 days they asked me to come were days I work another job and have another commitment. And I told them I couldn't come for that reason. But they saw fit to tell the press that I refused to come. Another thing that bothers me about the article, it says in one of the newspaper articles, a statement by Mr. Russell, I'm disturbed that rumors and innuendos could cause such a brouhaha and cost so much money to taxpayers. Well, we didn't ask them to have a special attorney. We didn't ask them to have a stenographer present at that meeting, which we weren't even told was going to be there. So it was obviously set up to be a dog and pony show for the county. But in any case, the person that's responsible for costing any money that the county claims would probably happen to be Mr. William Buck, who in a letter to the county chairman said, and I'll read the letter to Mr. Church, In light of the controversy surrounding the Wide Waters development in Volney, the IDA and county government, I am reaffirming my request that appeared in the press approximately 2 weeks ago regarding an inquiry on this matter. It is my feeling that it would be in the best interest of all concerned if your office acquired outside counsel and probed the allegations of possible conflict of interest and/or collusion that surrounds this development. A speedy and open resolution to this matter is warranted and requested. So we made no request to spend any money on this. It was done by our legislator. The other statement that I just cannot believe was made by Mr. Herbert Van Schack, legislator from town of Oswego. Right from the beginning, it smacked of McCarthyism at its worst. That's an unbelievable statement. All we simply are asking the county to do and the state to do is to look into the possibility. If they would look at their local law concerning ethics like we requested, it clearly states in there, as it does in just about every ethics law, that you should not even have the appearance of impropriety or conflict. And there certainly is that. And that's all we're asking for them, is to look into that. We're not going to play their games. That's why we got involved with the state. If the county of Oswego wants to do the job that we asked them to do, we didn't really expect them to, but at least we gave them that opportunity. Maybe they'll change their mind and do something with it, but we're not counting on too much from them, and we are hoping that the state will get involved. We should know sometime next week what their determination is on this situation.
I'm also very disturbed about Ted Jarrett's cracks about Chicken Little and things like that. I did not get notice of that meeting till the weekend before. I'm a tax accountant. I have appointments booked weeks in advance this time of year. I had appointments that afternoon. However, I did call Mr. Jarrett the night before so that I could talk to him. I was told by his wife at 4 o'clock that he was out doing chores and that he shouldn't be back until about 8 o'clock. I said, well, I have a meeting I have to go to, so I'm not sure if I'll be back right at 8, but I definitely would be back by around 9, and he called me as late as he had to. I'm still waiting for that call to be returned. I wanted to explain to him any background information that might be confusing from the general statements, but apparently he didn't want to know. Also, they said that they got an outside counsel, so this would be such a wonderfully impartial investigation. This is exactly what is wrong with this county. Their idea of a totally impartial lawyer was Joe Rodak, who works 20 hours a week for the Department of Social Services under Norm Sider. He was investigating his own boss. If that is their idea of outside, impartial, it's no wonder they don't understand our complaint. They don't seem to understand what looks like potential conflict of interest to someone else if that is their idea of outside counsel. Apparently, these people are so used to having the same people in different combinations on all their committees, they don't realize to the rest of the English-speaking world, this looks like a potential conflict of interest. And I wish that they would talk to some people in other counties and find out it isn't usually done this way.
It's interesting how Claudia and I were singled out in that letter when it was a board decision. I don't know why, it's just us two. The last correspondence I have is to Mr. Jim Dwyer, who is the attorney for the city of Fulton concerning the annexation issue, for the proposed annexation by Widewaters Pierce Drive Associates of premises located in the town of Volney and the city of Fulton. Dear Mr. Dwyer, the town of Volney is in receipt of your letter dated February 18, 1994, requesting lead agency status under seeker for the city of Fulton in connection with the environmental review of the above referenced project. The town board of the town of Volney hereby consents to the city of Fulton serving as lead agency under seeker. In establishing the scope of a draft environmental impact statement, it is urged that reference be made to issues posed in the positive declaration of the town of Volney dated February 10, 1994. Should the city require further information from the town or any meeting to further scope the issues to be addressed and considered in the draft environmental impact statement, please advise me. Thank you for your attention in this regard. Basically, that letter says that we've given the city of Fulton authority to be lead agency in this declaration. Okay, that's all I have under correspondence. Committee reports, I'm going to let Bob Roundtree speak first, Recreation, because he has another committee he has to be to. So, Bob, could you give your report?
Going back to February, we had the karaoke dance here. We had 53 kids. I really have to thank the ladies that helped out in the back and made the pizza, and it really worked out very well. February 18th, I had them launch some crafts for a group of kids. We had 21 kids there. 22nd, my daughter did lanyards. Howard calls it boondoggle, but the kids knew what they were doing anyway. Last Saturday night we had 53 kids and 25 adults at the Fulton Center for Volney Family Night ice skating, which worked out very nicely. I'd like to thank Alan and Donna and Valerie that showed up to help out. Next Friday night we have, not this coming Friday, following bingo and prizes for all ages. And I've laid out the schedule for April and May. April 8th, grades 4, 5, and 6 only. In the evening, as a Friday, I have floor hockey with padded sticks. They're not hockey sticks. Dodgeball, kickball, and pillow polo softball. If you find your chairs missing, it's just because we moved them all around. April 16th, I have arts and crafts and table games for the kids. And moving into May, we've scheduled family roller skating at the, and I don't know how you pronounce it. Don, how do you pronounce that? Milo. Okay. May 27th, I have the Twin Magicians from Fayetteville coming up. They're in their 30s, but they were recommended by Oswego Youth Department. And they're going to do magic and balloons. I've got 3 trips in June to Rice Creek, canoeing at Beaver Lake, 2 successive Saturdays. But I need, I could really use a few more people on the Recreation Committee, specifically somebody that'll do some publicity for me, you know, writing articles and so on. It takes a lot of time just to set the trips up. And unfortunately, I'm dealing with people that I dealt with on Long Island that, when I was teaching, that have kind of moved in the same direction I have. So it's really worked out very nicely. And I really have to thank Lila Burton. I've never seen anybody that works like she does. And I think she refused to come to the ice skating. She said, I'm not going there and listen to all that noise. It's really been a pleasure so far. Thank you, Howard.
Thank you. I'll restate what Bob said about help. If anyone's interested in viewing audience, they want to get involved with our rec committee and the recreation program, please contact myself or Bob. Okay, Claudia, do you have anything for the assessors? Or?
Yes, I talked to Faye Sanford, and there was some concern on the part of some residents because the notice they received from Assessment Services said to call between March 1st and March 11th, and they didn't get it until approximately March 5th. There was a problem with some of the processing after the notice had already been printed. They are extending that an equivalent amount of days, so you do have the full amount of time to call, so it will be extended into next week if anyone hasn't made an appointment. You don't have to be ready to go that day. You just need to be able to call to set up your appointment. So if anyone has a concern, and some of the residents do about exactly how this came up with, and obviously no one that went down is real concerned, but anybody who went up would like to talk to Assessment Services and find out why. So be sure and give them a call and set up your appointment even if you aren't quite ready to come in yet.
Did they make provisions to do it at night?
For some.
They will make provision if someone can't come during the day to see them at night.
What's the last day, the final day that they can call to make an appointment? Do you have a final day?
They hadn't finalized the last day, so, you know, by the middle of next week, people should really make a point of calling by then to at least get their appointment set up.
One of the questions that I've been asked this past week is this determination that's on this paper of your assessment, was that done by our assessors or somebody else? And I will tell everybody that was the figures that were derived from the data collection done by Assessment Services a year and a half ago? About that one? About a year ago? A year ago. So that's where those figures came from. Our assessors had nothing to do with those figures. You will have the opportunity to meet with Assessment Services to grieve whatever you have a problem with. If that fails, then you can grieve with the assessors themselves when they make their determination for the tentative tax roll, and then you'll have an opportunity to go before our grievance board of review. So you have 3 opportunities to try to adjust your assessment if you're not satisfied.
The reason why people may have seen the assessors going around with Assessment Services, it was not because they were putting the assessments on, it was because this is a different technique of putting assessments on than had been previously used, and so they were spending a lot of time with Assessment Services so they would learn that method so that it would be consistent once this initial putting of values on was finished.
Okay. Planning Board, Kevin?
The last meeting we held was on February 8, 1994. At that meeting, we approved a split, a minor subdivision split for Mr. and Mrs. Paul Foster. After that, we also reviewed our Vulcan area schedule. We took each section at a time, discussed each section, voted on each section, and made recommendations to the town board, which they worked with in the resolutions they passed in the last month or so. I was also working at the request of Howard, based on some concerns that were brought up. I know Bill and I think it was Lisa, sat down last Saturday. We've spent some time reviewing the minutes going back several years to try to update any amendments that have been made to the zoning ordinance, and I think we got a lot accomplished. I don't know, Bill, if you got the message. I did find something on the mobile homes that was buried in an old planning board book. But that was, I think we got a lot accomplished there. Our next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 15th. Unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town. I have, due to work, I'm going to have to be out of the area. We don't have anything major on the agenda at this time. The only thing we did have was Ed Marks wants to come down and speak to the planning board, and I would assume many interested people regarding the Scenic River Corridor, their plans regarding that. And what I'm going to do is give him a call and see if I can reschedule him for the next meeting in April. I don't know, unless you feel differently, how I don't see any reason to reschedule the meeting. If we had anything big going on, you know, I could see rescheduling it, but I thought I'll just have our senior planning board member take over and have the meeting that night.
Okay.
Okay. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Zoning, Marie?
The zoning board meeting last night, and I thank Lisa and Bill and Kevin for updating our zoning and hoping to get a consistent manual for all of us to use. I think it's real important, and I thank you for taking the time to do it. The only thing that I have to report that actually happened last night at the zoning board was we did schedule a public hearing for next month. Is it April 13th, Jim? I think it's at our next regular zoning meeting, which I think is the 13th. We will be holding a public hearing regarding the ice cream stand for Charlie Kerfing for a use variance and an area variance. And that was about the only action that was taken last night.
Thank you. Code enforcement, both of our code enforcement officers are away to school right now for 2 days, so Barb has a report for them.
Okay, the report for February for code enforcement officer. 2 permits were issued, stove and chimney for $20, a double wide for $112, for a total of $132. They issued 5 certificates of occupancy, and they issued 1 of certificate of compliance. They performed 12 construction inspections, and Cindy attended code enforcement class 1 in February and Bill and Cindy are attending a fire sprinkler class in March.
Thank you, Barb. Dog control, Jerry.
I had almost 62 calls and complaints since the last meeting. Picked up 7 dogs. We adopted out 6 dogs. I have 3 dogs over the kennel now. On the adoption, we're just about batting 100%. I know I asked for a few things there, and they say the funds are low. I just want to bring up that the town of Fulton, they get $10 for their dog license, where we get $7.50. Their spayed and neutered is $5, where we get $2.50. And maybe people want to think about raising it. Might cut down on some of the dogs that are running loose, because there's a lot of them. It might take a while for them to clean out. But people really want the dogs. I think they'd gladly pay the $10. And you generate a lot more funds for this. Because, let's face it, you can put some money away for a new truck or something for a year or two, because this one won't last forever. And you could use the money for other things. I guess that's about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Highway, Bob Kerfing is out of the hospital now. He's doing much better. And he is back to work in a capacity that's not quite what it was before, but he's coming around quickly. Barb has a report for him tonight.
Bob had 16 days plowing and sanding, 9 days maintenance of machinery, 5 days thawing pipes and culverts, 3 days coal patch. The wages were $14,792 and $14,802.89, and the total wages are $29,594.89. Repair bills was $15,550.31, and the total expenditures are $45,145.20.
Thank you, Barb. Okay, we had recreation. Any other committee reports?
Can I mention on the last Sunday, went to Blue and Gold Boy Scout, Cub Scout dinner here. That was held at a hall for a change, which seemed good to see a hall being used for children. It was good to see the whole families together at a function like that. But they do have a problem, and it's just like Mr. Roundtree stated, they also have a problem. They have a lot of children that want to be involved in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts like that, but they have no leaders. And they're looking for anybody that'd like to be a Scout Master. You have to be 21 years or older. Assistant Scout Master can be 18 or older. They need den mothers. Anybody that would help out with the children. They meet over to Mount Pleasant Church. The Cubs, the Rebels meet on Saturday at noon to 1 for the first year and 1 to 2 for the 2-year ones. And the Boy Scouts, the Cub Scouts meet on Wednesday night at 7 o'clock at the church hall. If anybody's interested, they go there and talk to Scoutmaster. They'd appreciate it. And I'd like to, after coming to a lot of these town meetings over the years, it seems good to get, I don't know if you want to call them complaints or nothing, but I get a lot of calls that a dog catcher's doing his job. So far he's been on 3 months. He's been at every one of our town board meetings giving us an update, and he answers the calls promptly. And it just seems good that people are complaining that they're seeing him on a job. But before, we always had complaints that we can't get hold of the dog catcher. He's nowhere to be found. And it just seems good that when you answer 22 dog complaints in 2 days' time, of course you're going to be noticing our truck on the road a lot. And probably would make things a lot easier if people realize that if they do have a complaint, that there's a complaint form that they have to fill out, and if they don't want to file a complaint, don't. But don't bother the dog catcher if he needs to be, don't need to be. But I think he's doing an excellent job for us, and I hope he stays on.
Oh, Bill, I'm sorry, I was supposed to give you a message from Earl Lockwood. After the Blue World banquet, Apparently, enough people started talking about it. They did have several men that called about the possibility of being a scoutmaster, so they may have that covered if anybody wants to give their name to Earl Lockwood so that they, in the future, if they get in bad shape for it, but they are still looking for den mothers and some of the other positions.
Okay. I'd like to echo the same praise for Jerry. I think he's doing a fine job. Thank you, Jerry. Old business. Does anyone have any old business? Okay, I have one item of old business, and it's old business because it's something that's normally done the first of the year, and that is appoint a historian. And as I mentioned at other meetings, I've had difficulty finding someone that was interested in the position. But I have found someone, and I'd like to announce that tonight. Her name is Fern Parsons, and she will be the new town historian as of this past month. So just wanted to make that public. Next, we have a public comment on resolutions only. If anyone has any comments on the resolutions at this time, we'll listen to them. Okay, must be waiting for us to discuss them first. Okay, let's start with the first resolution. First resolution is 94-88, and that's the amendment to the zoning ordinance of the town of Volney. I'll read it quickly in case you don't have a copy. The Town Board of the Town of Volney, County of Oswego, State of New York, does hereby enact and ordain as follows. Section 1, Section 7, Subdivision B of the zoning ordinance of the Town of Volney is hereby amended by amending the last sentence of the second paragraph of said subdivision to read as follows. One copy of such plan, when approved by the building inspector, shall be returned to the owner upon the payment of a fee, the amount of which shall be established from time to time by resolution of the Town Board. Section 2, Section 8, Subdivision C, parentheses B, of the zoning ordinance of the Town of Volney is hereby amended to read as follows. Upon filing a notice of appeal and payment by the applicant or appellant of a filing fee, the amount of which shall be established from time to time by resolution of the Town Board, the building inspector shall forthwith transmit to the Board of Appeals all the papers constituting the record and upon which the action appealed from was taken. Section 3, Section 8, Subdivision E, parentheses 2, of the zoning ordinance of the Town of Volney is hereby amended to read to follows. All applications for special use permits shall be filed with the Secretary to the Board of Appeals in writing, shall be made in a form required by the Board of Appeals, and shall be accompanied by payment of a filing fee, the amount of which shall be established from time to time by resolution of the Town Board, and a plot plan drawn to scale and accurately dimensioned showing the location of all existing and proposed buildings and structures on the lot. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect immediately. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Discussion by the board?
This seems reasonable, Howard. I thought we'd done this quite a while ago, and it makes sense to get it out of the zoning and put it into a place where we can just act on it.
If anyone doesn't understand the legal jargon here, basically what we're doing is taking all the fee schedules out of our zoning and putting them into a separate fee schedule outside the zoning, so that whenever we need to adjust them as time goes on and costs go up, we can simply do that with a resolution without going through public hearings and making local laws and so on and amending our zoning. So that's the purpose for this. Any other discussion by the board? Any discussion from the audience? Okay. Barb, you poll the council?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Next resolution, 94-89. Move to accept local law number 2 for the year 1994 to prohibit the storage or disposal of radioactive waste material in the town of Volney, County of Oswego, State of New York, and to hereby enact and ordain the following. Section 1, definitions as used herein. The following definitions shall apply. A, radioactive waste material, any waste material including municipal or industrial sludge contaminated with or containing radioactivity, classified or unclassified, including any such waste material determined to be below regulatory concern. Section 2, the temporary or permanent storage, deposit, or disposal of any radioactive waste material upon or under any land or in any structure, building, or area located within the town of Volney. Section 3, in addition to any other enforcement remedies, my page is stapled over the words. Enforcement remedies violating this law shall be fined not less than $300 nor more than $500 for each offense, and a separate offense shall be deemed committed on each day during or on which a violation occurs or continues. I'll move it.
Second.
Discussion by the board.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm totally in agreement with the concept, but I have some questions that I'd like to have answered for me prior to voting. First question is, it says any waste material, so I'm assuming that we're saying that zero waste material would be allowed to be brought in. Now, the minute that you say zero or never, there's always going to be some kind of an exception to this, and I would take, for example, in the second place where it says the temporary or permanent storage, deposit, disposal of any radioactive waste material. Conceivably, a person storing a smoke alarm that I just found out, because I didn't know ahead, and I don't think Alan did, that you couldn't throw them in the garbage. I didn't realize that you couldn't do that, and I imagine many people...
I knew you could.
I don't know that I've paid that much attention to them, but I have a feeling that there are people that might have been doing it, so they might have inadvertently been subjecting themselves to quite a penalty in the event that this is passed. There are so many advances being made in the area of science as our detection devices become more and more and more sophisticated. I don't know what the levels are that we could eventually reach that we couldn't allow in there. I have no idea what we're doing if we pass this, because I think we could end up penalizing those that we don't want to penalize. I wonder, for example, in talking with Kevin Conley, could, for example, a smoke detector company or firm come in if they wanted to make smoke detectors here? Because if they couldn't store radioactive materials or materials that are used in the construction of those, would that exclude that business from the community? According to this particular ordinance, I believe that it would, because temporary or permanent storage on any land or any structure or building would imply to me that that would immediately exclude that type of company from our community. The concept is great. I'm not sure that I thoroughly understand totally what can and cannot be excluded, because I wish John Talbert hadn't left, because I've talked with science teachers at school, I've talked with people in the area of science, and John brought out some of the points that they've told me. Everything is radioactive. And there is very little, if anything, that couldn't be construed to violate this particular ordinance. My point is, I'm afraid it's too general now, and I would ask for some clarification from someone else on the board if my fears are unfounded, that we could in actuality be penalizing anyone in the town for inadvertently disposing of some materials. And I tend to think it could be used in a punitive way if it was enacted.
Well, I'll just answer your question, and Kevin's at the same time, I think. It's not really going to be an answer. It's going to be with another question, probably. Kevin said, have we checked into it enough? Well, what is enough? I mean, the information out there is so diverse on both sides of the issue, and it seems to be filtered quite a bit, too, as to what we hear and what is really true. We really don't have any idea, so we could discuss it till the cows come home, and we still won't know any more than we know tonight, probably. I think my concern is, one, if I'm going to err in any direction, I'd rather err on the side of over-regulating this than under-regulating it. Someone was talking about you treat cancer with radiation, but we also know that radiation causes cancer, so where do you draw the line there, too, on how much radiation is going to be in an area? Our zoning also bans incinerators and landfills, as I think Marie pointed out, but that hasn't stopped the county from building landfills and incinerators in this town, and I'm sure it's not going to stop them from depositing radioactive waste in this town, even if we pass this local law. I guess the most we can hope from it is that we are making a strong statement, probably the strongest one you can make, by creating a local law. And if that's all we're effective in doing, then that's all we're effective in doing.
Could a doctor be cited in the community for having radioactive materials, for example, for his x-ray machine, that type of thing? Yeah, under this ordinance, I believe he could.
Well, under this ordinance...
I believe he could, though.
This is saying waste material.
No, it says temporary or permanent storage of any radioactive waste. But waste, wouldn't you be having to store it, though, for a period of time? If you were taking an x-ray, you have to store it for a period of time.
There's no waste.
That's not considered waste?
Also, from talking to Steve Ite, really, a lot of these regulations and permits, we don't really have local control over. What this local law does is not make it so these things can't exist. It makes it so there is a public statement of local concern. And when there is a definite public statement of local concern, it makes the approval process more involved. It makes more public hearings required. It makes it so that anything that is going to happen is looked at more closely. It doesn't mean if we pass this tonight that we can guarantee to you that nothing will ever come into this town that we aren't unhappy about. But this will require things to be looked, what is called, in all these planning things, a hard look. And I think that that is the least that we can do for the town of Volney, is make it so that if things are going to come into this town, that we take a hard look at them and make sure that there isn't something hidden that we don't realize, there is some bad side effect that wasn't immediately obvious when we looked at it. And that is what we'll accomplish by this.
Ultimately, we would be the ones to enforce this, since we're the ones making the law. And
then you're saying we would selectively enforce it?
No, I'm not saying we would selectively enforce it. I'm saying that
there's no room for, the minute you say all, Howard,
well,
then I have a major problem, because you leave no room for...
No stone unturned.
No room for any considerations or any things that we don't foresee at this particular point.
Well, first of all, enforcing this, Jim, is probably going to be very, very difficult, because how are we going to know? We have no way of testing anyway. Like I said, this is really, probably the most we can hope for this is just making the strongest statement possible and making a local law. Obviously, we're not going to be able to tell who has low-level nuclear waste anywhere in this town, and we're not going to be able to follow up and watch them. There's no watchdog groups that we can form. How would we even be able to do that? It's not realistic to think that we even could. So I think your concerns are not valid for that reason. There's no way we can police this anyway.
This is not saying that a hard look won't be taken at something that isn't something to be concerned about, and so they would get a permit approved. And if the DEC gives them a permit, that supersedes this local law.
Just another comment I'd like to make. Alan mentioned an editorial here a couple weeks ago about, well, it was about this subject and myself as well, and it referenced, they said, the fact that I refused to come to a meeting. I'd like to set the record straight on that, too. We had a meeting here the week prior with some experts in the field as well, that the DEC gentleman, Steve Ite, was here, and after the meeting, he was the one, by the way, who said you should have a local law if you want to stop it. So after the meeting, he suggested a possible meeting with myself, Mr. Mangano, who's a supervisor from Minetto, some DEC officials, I believe he said some county officials, I'm not sure about that, but I knew he said some Niagara Mohawk officials, and their radiation expert from Albany. And he wanted to have a meeting up in Syracuse and wanted to know if I could attend, and he said he would tentatively set it for Thursday at 1 o'clock. I told him I wasn't sure if I would even be here because I was going to be out of town for 5 days in New York for the Association of Towns meeting, but that if he would confirm it with me, I would see if I could make it when I got back. As it turned out, he confirmed it on Tuesday. I was not here. on Tuesday, but when I got back on Thursday morning, there wasn't time to even think about that because we had the EDZ meeting that day at 5 o'clock that I had to prepare for. I did call him and tell him, not him personally, but his secretary, that I couldn't make that 1 o'clock meeting because I had other commitments and there wasn't enough time to get up there because I'd just gotten back into town. The comment in the paper saying that I refused to go is inaccurate. I didn't refuse to go. I did question the closed-door meeting, not because it was an illegal meeting, because it's not. The Open Meetings laws do not require a meeting of one-on-one officials like that to be open. But nevertheless, I felt that it should have been, but that would not have been my reason for not going, because I did want to know more about this subject. But the thing that bothered me the most about the editorial was it went on and on about the town of Volney being hasty in their decision possibly to pass this local law banning radioactive waste. And it said that we were being a little hysterical and there was nothing to worry about and so on and so forth. So I pulled out an editorial that I recalled back in 1990 when the Herald Journal, which is also a Syracuse newspaper, the first editorial, by the way, was in the Post-Standard. The one from 1990 was in the Herald Journal, and it did nothing but praise the county of Oswego when they passed their local law banning low-level nuclear waste back in 1990. But here's the same newspaper criticizing us for doing the very same thing. I don't know if time changed that or if it just happens to be the town of Volney making this, and you know, we're subject to that kind of criticism. But in any case, just to set the record straight, I didn't refuse to go. I wasn't able to go. They knew that. I don't know why they reported it that way in the paper.
And especially since I had called them, I called Albany and Syracuse and all over because I got wind of the fact there was going to be a meeting, even though Howard wasn't back to have the information. And they said that no, none of the other board members could go. And the reason was the room wasn't big enough. Well, they must have a cafeteria or something. I mean, if they don't have any offices big enough to hold 10 people, I'm sure we could have all sat in the cafeteria and discussed this. I think it's a pretty lame excuse.
Howard, did I hear you say under this you felt that industry that used radioactive materials could come into the township, or not?
No, I didn't say that, Jim, at all.
Do you believe that that would exclude that type of business, or do you feel that there would be...
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
In our zoning update that we had last Saturday, the town board passed an amendment to our current zoning where radioactive waste is prohibited in industrial zones. So if it's already prohibited in industrial zones, then what's the problem?
Well, wait a minute. No, my question is, Bill, you're
It's
saying
already
then
prohibited in industrial
then
zones.
you're saying that a company could not come in.
But how do you want to interpret that zoning?
Well, that's exactly what I'm wondering. And tell me this about this town board meeting Saturday.
The town board meeting was the update with Kevin and I and Lisa. We were
Oh,
trying to get the
I'm
book
sorry, you said
together.
there was a town board meeting Saturday. I misunderstood.
No, well, we had a meeting there at 9 o'clock. Then this all brings us back to everything is on the same table all the time. I've heard these same arguments for asbestos. Asbestos is good for you. You know, it's going to insulate your pipes and all that. It's going to save your heat, your steam, and protect you from burns. But what did asbestos turn out to be? It determined that it was a real hazard to people's things, and people that had concerns about this in the past, they were just laughed at. This nuclear energy stuff was supposed to be put in effect to lower producing the cost of electricity and everything, but I still feel, as I did 25 years ago with 9 Mile 1, that they put the cart before the horse on this one. They come up with nuclear energy, but they said, well, we'll take care of the waste later. We'll produce all the radioactive stuff and get the rates or whatever you want to call it, the profits from it. Then we have it. We have to convince the people that we got to dump it someplace. And I think now comes a time where it goes back on their shoulders that they have to. The people that produce the nuclear energy is going to have to come up with an answer, and not at the people's expense, being near residential developments and stuff like that. If you're going to have these kind of radioactive things that they're talking about, you ought to get them in barren land someplace that's unusable. You have to kind of wonder, if these people are the ones that are telling you all this stuff, in the 26th of February's paper, they're talking to you about this great 4.5 foot by 10 circular cast that holds the hot radiation, because it's a lot hotter than what we're talking about. And it's laying with 6 inches of lead. And between Oswego to Barnesville, the readings went up to 7 times the limit. But it was supposed to be perfectly safe, but the nuclear regulatory, or the service manager at the Fitzpatrick said, well, there's no problem that it leaked out of this well-protected container because we had canvas over it. Now, if 6 inches of lead and stainless steels or several layers won't protect you from leakage of radiation, what's a simple protective canvas going to do if the can breaks open? There's not. Everybody always looks to try to fix something after the accident happened, and I think this is a step in the right direction that we have to take. We should take.
Okay, then we agree that it excludes industry. Does it exclude the new hospital?
Wait a minute.
The new hospital seems.
Oh yeah, we did. He said that if it's an industry that uses radioactive material, because
the hospitals, most of the hospitals take care of the problem before they develop it. Usually, they have a place to dump the stuff. Usually, the nuclear energy, they created the problem without a solution. Now they're trying to find something to do with the problem. And this hospital thing, it keeps you reminding every time you read a paper when a school board budget comes up, well, geez, the people didn't pass it this time. We'll put it right back up there and we'll tell them, well, you don't like kids because you're against schools. But now we're saying that, well, we don't want to have, we're against radiation or landfill dumps because they're not going to put a hospital in it, and we're bad people because we're against hospitals.
Bill, that's not my question.
The hospitals still go there if they want to go there, if that's the best place for it. I don't think it's the best place for it anyways.
Well, wait a minute, Bill. Wait. I still don't understand what you said. I understood you to say that if industry generated radioactive waste by the existing regulations, they are excluded.
Yeah, according to our regulations.
And this would
be an industrial zone.
And this would
put it in the rest of the area, the whole town.
You could put it anywhere except industrial?
No. Yeah, right now you can. By local amendment, it's only done in an industrial zone. It's prohibited.
Okay, secondly, the situation, this does not affect the hospital that's tentatively going in. In other words, as long as they have a way to dispose of their radioactive waste, this is not a problem. This would not affect them. Is that correct?
Well, I imagine if a hospital wants to go in, they're going to have that avenue taken care of somehow. That would be discussed before they go to the hospital or go in the operation.
But it would be in violation of this ordinance.
Well, usually when they plan a hospital, they usually go through your zoning and check all these things out and see how they can mitigate them. If they can't be mitigated, then they don't build the hospital or whatever you want to build.
We have 3 things that are in violation of our ordinance right now, Jim, and 2 landfills and incinerators, so I don't think we need to really concern ourselves with that issue right now. You know, when the time comes and they pursue this with us and they feel that our local law is not fair to them and they can demonstrate that we need to amend it or modify it, then we can consider that at the time. But right now I think that this action is warranted. Any other discussion on the board? Any discussion from the public? Christine?
I just want to say that the county passed this law, and I feel like they did it now because they were trying to patronize us. I think the town board, don't pass a resolution because you want to patronize us. I think that if you make this law, you can stand firm by it, and granted, you're not going to be standing and watching at the landfill. But I think as a town board, you need to go to the county. You need to go to the state as a whole. You need to go to the NRC for all that's worth. You need to let them know what you've done and that you need to request this public hearing, as I stated, even though we've heard there's going to be one. I think the town board needs to send them their law, send them this law, if passed, and request the public hearing. And at the public hearing, I think the town board would have a lot of pull speaking to the DEC officials with the fact that you have. And I think that what we need to ask for, so that we can be sure that this waste does not go into our facility, the county should have done it long ago. If they were going to pass a law, they should have had a way to monitor it. And there are ways. There are ways to monitor it. Not all the ways are so expensive that we couldn't afford it. They can afford to make the law. They can afford to monitor it. And I think as a town board, you have a lot of authority. And maybe you won't be standing there saying, all right, is this load radioactive? You will have the authority, though, to go to the county and to the state and say, we've had enough. We're tired of you dumping on us. Art Ospelt writes a letter about the dump and blames Volney, when in fact he knows that he was, the county administrator was in charge of the dump, and the DEC signed the permission for 8,000 barrels. They're signing the permission for little tiny bits of radioactive waste, and they're also allowing the ash to go in, which we said was hazardous. And I imagine a few years down the road they're going to admit that is hazardous, and we'll have another Superfunded site. At least, yeah, maybe bananas are radioactive, but let's try to keep the man-made radioactivity out of there if we can't keep the natural radioactivity out.
Thank you. Colleen?
I just want to, I guess this is more of a question than a comment. I want to know why every time our town board does something the way the people in the town of Volney want, why there are objections from people in the county. I mean, it's like another day, another surprise for Volney, or another present from the county. But we don't want any more presents. And we want you guys to keep doing what you've been doing and voting for things in the best interest of Volney. And no agendas for the county or for anyone else, only what's best for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin?
Regarding the local law, first of all, I'd like to say that I understand discussion is discussion, which means bringing out different perspectives. I don't think that means somebody is automatically against something or automatically against what's being done. You're bringing out perspectives, trying to explore an issue, and come up with the best. Sometimes by mixing ideas, you come up with the best solution. As I understand it, the local law primarily aimed by discussion tonight is aimed at the landfill. Maybe there could be consideration given towards orienting this local law more particularly to the landfill. Now, why am I bringing this up? Okay, I happen to be the planning board chairman, therefore I'm supposed to be representing, I guess, somewhat those interests. A lot of industries that do plan on coming into the town, now I'm not talking about industries that are here now, but precision tool shops, precision industries, they don't live in the town. They send some kind of attorney or some kind of representative to a bunch of different communities, and they scope out the communities for sites. They'll take a copy of the zoning law, they take it back to a bunch of attorneys someplace else, and then from that they get, well, what's the best place, what can we look at, what would welcome us, what presumes to be good, what presumes to be bad. And the only thing I'm trying to say is I think that we can accomplish exactly what you want to accomplish, but possibly a minor changing in the wording to aim it more particularly at the landfill might not cause some unthought about bad side, which could be that some guy representing some corporation somewhere, maybe to go into the Miller site or maybe to go into some other site, may come down here and look at this and presume that to say, this is going to be a big hassle for us. We don't even want to consider, let's go to this secondary site. And that's the only thing I'm saying. What I heard tonight is that the county passed a law banning radioactive waste, and then I heard you just say they banned the law passing low-level radioactive waste. Sometimes by getting the wording right, you can make sure that you're accomplishing what you want to accomplish. And that's the only thing I'm saying. Maybe it should be thought about and considered. Maybe there's a way of aiming it more particularly at the landfill, which is where we're aiming. I think that's what we want to accomplish.
Alan?
I believe that Kevin is probably, well, what he said occurred to me, that this is all has to do with the Bristol Hill. There are probably numerous federal laws and DEC provisions that are already in place for that you can't just bring radioactive waste or radioactive anything and just put it in your backyard. I mean, they look very closely at that, and I think that we're primarily concerned with Bristol Hill. Also, and that we should say that, because I think that that's all we're concerned with, and that if they're going to do it anywhere else, they're going to be in big trouble, I believe. The other thing is that, I forgot what the other thing is. I should have written it down. It'll come to me.
I think we come to the big part of this now, is enforcement. What do? Get a Geiger counter and let the supervisor go out and check it? The building inspector, I don't think he can do it. And the sheriff, that's the county. How are you going to depend on them?
We're not addressing that because it's probably impossible for us to even deal with that, because we don't have the funds available to do that, we don't have the manpower, we just...
Can you go to the
know-how.
DEC and ask them?
No, like I said earlier, the purpose of this local law is just to send the strongest message we can. You know, the county's not enforcing either. They passed the local law 4 years ago, and they have done nothing to enforce it. They had no provisions for enforcing it, but they passed the local law.
Howard, would anyone else on with Alan and...
I'm sorry, I have the floor.
I'm sorry.
How you made me forget. Oh, but I'm for the board in essence, but I'd like to see it enforced.
I would too.
What Alan and Kevin said certainly made an awful lot of sense to me. I can support that without any problem if we limit it to the landfill, and I think that's what our concern is. That's my concern, and that's...
Reading section 2, it says the temporary or permanent storage, deposit, or disposal. It doesn't say anything about a manufacturing process where it's generated. In other words, we don't want them to keep it there. They can produce it, but get rid of it as soon as it's there. You know,
that's not what it says, though, Kevin. See, it says temporary or permanent storage. The minute you say temporary storage, you created a boondoggle. And I firmly believe that what you're talking about is the landfill, and I certainly can completely support that.
Okay, but I would think that if someone is generating low-level waste, if they're not going to store it on site, I think they would want to take it somewhere where it's disposed of properly, correct?
Absolutely.
So this is only defining what we think they're going to be doing anyway. We hope that they're going to be doing.
But on a temporary basis, you may accumulate amounts and then ship it out. When they accumulate a certain...
What do we define temporary as? Right, it's a vague description anyway.
It is so vague that you could have people that were in non-compliance with this so easily.
Well, what Ron Carr suggested is that whether or not this is the most perfect radioactive waste material local law in the world, that isn't the issue. The thing is, you get something in place. If you working with the wording, come up with a better wording later, then you can amend the local law. Anything that you can do by local law, you can amend by local law. And then if we come up with a more perfect wording, we can amend this later. I'm not going to say that in a couple of months somebody wouldn't come up with something. There were already some people saying, why are the fines so cheap? Why aren't there another 0 or 2 at the end? Because $300 and $500 certainly is petty cash tonight, Mohawk. The point is, you make a statement, you make the process more involved for permits. It doesn't mean that the DEC can't override you and give a permit, and this also does not stop us from, when we do come up with a better wording, amending the local law at that point. But something is in place right now.
Charlie?
I would, to pursue something Jim was bringing up, I would think if some industry came in that was using radioactive materials, we would want to take a look at that. We would want to decide whether or not we wanted that in the town. This would require public hearings to determine whether or not that was something that the citizenry wanted to be exposed to. And I think that's a proper use of local government. That does not mean that we would not decide that we would want that industry and would certainly want to pursue it. I don't think it excludes us from being able to do that.
And the thing that was pointed out by Brickley, who was a lawyer that used to work for the DEC when we were interviewing lawyers for the town, is that regulations that you have requiring a hard look at things, making it so that you do engineering studies, you do a little legal work required to make sure that things are right, do not deter good developers. And if we are deterring ones from coming to town who are going to do detrimental things to our town, I'm not really brokenhearted over it.
As soon as I sat down, I remembered what I wanted to say. And I appreciate your recognizing me again. Exactly what was the wording? As I recall, the county law was relatively short. Was it not?
Fairly short.
And if the county law was the one that instigated NIMO's request for variance to this law, then maybe we should copy that, because it seemed to have gotten their attention. And I don't know exactly what the wording was. Did they say no, none, ever, never, anywhere in the county, or what exactly was it?
Okay, I thought I had my
Which
copy.
version do you want? The one that they actually passed at the public hearing, or the one they changed 3 weeks ago when we asked for a copy?
Chris, you would bring up that they seem to have pulled a little sleight of hand here and changed the color of the handkerchief.
When we spoke on this local law in 1990, it was local law number 4 for 1990, but when we just got the copy of it here a few weeks ago, it was local law number 3 for 1990. I don't know how that happened, but...
There's no use even talking about what we thought they were going to do. What we really must discuss is what they did. Thank you for bringing it.
Yes, I do have it, and I just made a copy of it.
Should be noted, I read in the paper that David Copperfield made $27 million last year. Seems the magic is big all over.
I must have it out of order here. Okay, I'm sorry, it's right here. This is what was passed in 1990 at the public hearing. Definitions. Below regulatory concern. Now, radioactive waste was already banned because Kevin said radioactive below radioactive was already banned previously. This was an addition to the local law. Below regulatory concern radioactive waste was radioactive waste deemed by the United States Environmental Protection Agency or the New York State Department of Health or the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to be acceptable for disposal at solid waste disposal facilities. That is how they worded it. That meant even though the states would say it's BRC, it's a little bit, it's okay, the county said that that was banned.
Now that's what we thought they were passing.
Right. Now,
What did they actually pass?
well, this is what I thought they actually passed, but when we got a copy about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and I don't know if you can tell by me reading it that the wording has changed, but it says any radioactive waste or waste heretofore defined as radioactive waste that has been deregulated. Now that wording was not used in the previous one. Deregulated means to call it BRC so they can get rid of it at a lower rate, a cheaper way. By the United States Environmental Protection Agency or the Nuclear Regulatory Commission or the New York State Department of Health or Environmental Conservation, which could potentially be disposed of in a county solid waste management facility. Those are both.
Another day, another surprise.
Right.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Is there any other concern on the board about industry or anything that might be concerned with this local law? Or do you think we pretty well covered it? Our attorney wrote this for us, by the way. We used our legal counsel to be sure that we're wording it properly and covering ourselves on this local law. I'm satisfied with it. I think it touches all the bases we needed to touch, and I don't think it preempts anyone from doing something that they might be able to do otherwise because of state regulations or county regulations. But I think we need to make this statement, and I'm satisfied with it. John Tolbert, his comments, he may be absolutely true in what he's saying. I don't know. I can't say. All I know is that I'm just concerned that a little bit may end up being a lot. And where that'll end, who knows if we don't pass this local law.
And no one wants to consider limiting this to just a landfill.
We can't change it without another public hearing, and I think...
Oh, yeah.
No, we could change the
We
wording
can change the wording, we can modify it.
But I'm satisfied myself anyway that this is what we need to pass, the way the wording is now. I think that if the hospital has a concern with it, they'll come to us and they'll say, hey, look, we need to adjust that if we're going to come into this community, and we'll take a look at it. But I think for now, this is what we have to deal with.
Yes, I'd much rather err on the side of caution at looking at this later with other concerns brought out, that there's a slight difference in the wording. We can always amend it, but this way it's in place before the next shipment.
And then we'll also force a public hearing, hopefully, before the next shipment.
Do I have the assurance of the rest of the board that we'll look at this and take that into consideration? Because I really want to look at it, but I do want it in place before the next shipment. But I do want to look at the issue of limiting possibly to the landfill area.
If we can find, if you can find something, Jim, that will tell us that this wording should be amended to say something else, certainly I'll look closer. We'll discuss it. Sure, we'll open anything. I think tonight we have to go with what we have on the table, though, in order to assure that the problem doesn't develop in this town.
I understand we need to do it before the next shipment.
And I also think from listening to the gentleman from the DEC before, you want to talk about Bristol Hill landfill a lot of time. That's the second landfill in our community. What's to have us question or us know about possibly if the county or somebody wants to decide to build just a hazardous waste disposal landfill someplace else in our community. This regulation covers all of our land and that, but the DEC could might have something to help us fight this issue if there was a fightable issue. But if we don't have it in the books, it's kind of hard to fight something after.
Yeah, that's
having protection would be almost in like with a moratorium on towers. You try to fight the issue after the fact. This makes the developer or the person that's going to be producing the stuff accountable up front. Because there's a little leeway on it, not us to work to make it legal for them afterwards.
That's one of the things that our attorney brought up, and why he wrote it as general as he did, is he said if you zero in and say you don't want this at Bristol Hill, well, they'll decide to put some at the airport. Or maybe they'll decide to put some over at the incinerator, or at some of the other places that they own in town. You need to have it general. If you come upon a problem that is caused by the law, you can make a modification to correct that problem.
Barb, will you poll the council?
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Councilor Ridgeway?
Aye.
Councilor Smart?
Aye.
Councilor Warren?
Aye.
Supervisor Rhodes?
Aye. Next resolution, 94-90. Whereas the Fulton Church and Community Workers Program sponsors the Fulton Community Food Network to create awareness of local hunger needs, and whereas the issue of hunger, especially as it affects infants and children, is an issue of statewide and national importance, and whereas Thursday, March 24th, 1994, has been declared Hunger Awareness Day by Mario Cuomo, Governor of the State of New York, I, Howard Rose, Supervisor of the Town of Volney, New York, proclaim Thursday, March 24th, 1994, to be a Hunger Awareness Day in the Town of Volney. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Barb, will you poll the council?
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Councilor Ridgeway?
Aye.
Councilor Smart?
Aye.
Councilor Warren?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose.
Aye. I failed to give public discussion on that, but I think that everyone's satisfied with that. Resolution 94-91. Whereas on February 10th, 1994, a resolution for an amendment to the area and bulk schedule was voted upon and approved by the Volney Town Board, and whereas a typographical error excluded a portion of the amendment in the resolution that was passed concerning B1 zones, and whereas that portion was included in the proposed change available to the public, which read that for the B1 zone under non-residential, the minimum lot size be increased to 1/2 acre and width at the road line remain at 100 feet. Therefore, be it resolved that the above section be included in the area bulk schedule amendment of February 10th, 1994. I'll move it.
I'll second
Any discussion? Any discussion from the public? Barbie, poll the council.
Councilor Pierce?
it. Aye.
Councilor Ridgway?
No.
Councilor Smart?
Aye.
Councilor Warren?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Next resolution, 94-92, move to approve the purchase of a Sharp SF 2027 copier per proposed contract from Usherwood Copy Products for the state bid price of $4,624.75. I'll move it.
I'll second. Discussion. This was
Discussion.
to include all these items.
Yes, yeah, the items are on that sheet. Right.
You gave us a sheet somewhere.
Yeah, I gave you the proposal.
Yeah, the proposal, I know, and
You have that?
somewhere here.
Okay, there's also a sheet that includes the options that were
Right.
included in this.
Right, that was the sheet I was looking for.
Okay, I'll read it to you if you don't have it
Go
there.
ahead.
It includes a reversing automatic document feeder, a duplexing unit, a paper drawer and stand, a 20-bin sorter. That's quite a system if anyone knows anything about copiers, and that's a very, very good price at state bid. The copier that we have now is on its last legs, and if we don't replace it soon, we may end up paying full shot for one, and we want to take advantage of the pricing available right now. So, any discussion from the public on this? Donna?
What do you do with your old copier?
Well, the old copier we can still utilize until it does.
No, I know, I don't want it.
Oh.
No, I just meant that is that something that you can put in a landfill, or does somebody?
Well, Bob Kirpine has been crying for a copier like that for quite some time. He's at least pleaded for that one for quite some time, so if it is possible, I
Well, we're trying to
certainly would.
figure out a way to put it where the justices can use it so we can have our...
Does that have value as a trade?
Not really.
Not
really, no. The one that we're getting is really a state-of-the-art system, and we want to keep it in the town clerk's office and not for general use, because we don't want it abused in any way. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with the one we have, Jim, but my first thought was just to have it as a backup copier, but also one that the judges use on court night, also the attorneys that come in use a copier. And we really do need a second copier in the building for those purposes. Recreation is in here using the copier at times.
The more involved the equipment is, the more training you need on it so you don't screw something up. So that way, the one that requires more training would be in the town clerk's office, only used under supervision, and that way the older one could be where it's easier to find.
Yeah, but the only problem we run into there is we become penny wise and pound foolish, because the older machine breaks down so much more quickly than the other one. If you only have one person using it, and that's why I I thought about Bob, because the minute that you use that machine and you have the attorneys using it and everyone, and you're generating a lot of copies, we're going to expend so much money on repairs again, I'm afraid. It happens all the time at school. Once they get to a certain point, you can put them in a little office and have one secretary use it, and it'll last for a great period of time, but the old machine doesn't work for the large majority.
Oh, we can discuss that.
I mean, that's something we need to look at.
Okay, we can discuss that. We have a motion on the floor. Barbie, poll the council.
Councilor Pierce?
Aye.
Councilor Ridgway?
Aye.
Councilor Smart?
Aye.
Councilor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Resolution 94-93, move to approve the renewal of the liquor license of Pierre's Cabin in accordance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Law, Section 64 and 109. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion from the board?
Yes, do we ever get these ahead of time so we can review them and find out if there is a problem? I mean, we got two of them right up here tonight that we don't know if there's been a problem around or not, for anybody to even report.
I'm not sure who we would find out where there's been a problem with. I mean, if you ask them, obviously they're gonna say there hasn't been, but where do we go to find out? The sheriff's department has an idea?
There's gotta be a renewal date on these, right? The deadline must be coming up on both of them?
I believe the deadline has already been passed by this first one. We're a little late in renewing it, actually. I know in the past, all that's ever come in is a letter of request, and as long as you're not aware that anything has been a problem, because our resolution, I don't believe, is all that they have to get this license. I think they have to go through the state as well.
They have to go through the ABC board, yeah.
It's an annual thing, yeah. All it is saying that, hey, we don't seem to have anything to be concerned about with it, and we approve it. But there was a problem. If there was a problem, I would think we would know about it.
Well, if there's a problem, I don't think the ABC board would read them up.
Correct, yeah, so there's other channels that they have to go through before they get this license besides us. Any other discussion? Any discussion from the public? Barbie, poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor?
Aye. Resolution 94-94, move to approve the renewal of the liquor license for Fulton Speedway in accordance with the Alcohol Beverage Control Law, Section 64 and 109. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Any discussion from the audience? Barbie, poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Council Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor?
Aye. The next resolution, 94-95, I'm going to ask that we table this one until a future meeting because I have not been able to get anyone from the Assessment Board of Review to confirm whether or not they want the position. Ed Bowering, who was the chairman of the Assessment Board of Review, has submitted his resignation as chairman. He's still on the board, but he submitted his resignation as chairman. So I'll ask that we table this one. Unless anyone knows that one of these members of the board, because I haven't been able to get a hold of all of them.
No, I don't know if anybody
Okay.
that is looking for the chairmanship.
Okay. The next resolution, 94-96, move to increase the filing fee for the Zoning Board of Appeals from $25 to $65 to cover the costs associated with appeals. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, this falls right in line with the public hearing we had earlier to remove that fee schedule from our zoning. So now we can make a simple resolution to adjust the fees. And we've had requests from the zoning board and the planning board to increase it from 25 to 65 because of the costs associated with advertising in the paper, hiring someone to take minutes and so on. So that's the purpose. Any other discussion on the board?
Yeah, this isn't a moneymaker, this is just to make it so we'll break even.
Right, so it doesn't cost everyone in the town to have these. Any discussion from the public? Okay. Barbie, poll the council.
Council Pierce?
Aye.
Council Ridgway?
Aye.
Mr. Smart?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor?
Aye. Resolution 94-97. Move that the Volney Town Board hereby accepts the proposal submitted by Save Video Productions dated March 10th, 1994 for videotaping town board meetings for the year 1994 at a cost of $35 per meeting to be charged to the account A1010.4. Approval of this agreement will be retroactive to the beginning of 1994. I'll move it.
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion on the board. I'll start off by making a few comments of my own here. First of all, I don't know if the board's aware of it, and you might want to consider this. That account number 1010.4 is the town board's contractual. We have $1,200, I think, in there, and I don't know if any of you have it earmarked for anything, but we don't really have a fund set up for this because it wasn't budgeted for this year. And if the board wants to approve this, That's the only place I could see where we could take the money out of without hurting us too much. Also, Terry has been videotaping our meetings for over 2 years now, and he started doing this on his own. No one requested him to do it. And I just want to read to you the message that he puts on his videotapes when he shows it on TV. It says, "As a public service to my fellow residents of the town of Volney, I have been volunteering my time to videotape meetings since January of 1992. My only motive is a firm belief that an informed electorate will make informed decisions at election time that ultimately benefits us all. If you share my belief and would like to donate blank videotapes to help with my expenses, please call me at 598-5120. Now, what Terry's been doing the last 2 years, I think we can all appreciate, especially the people that have been able to see this on TV, because a lot of people just don't have the time to come out to these meetings, and the interest is there, but they just can't do it. And Terry has provided a service that I don't think anyone can dispute has made a difference in the last few years as to how people perceive their town government and what's going on in the community. So that's why I introduced this motion tonight. Is there any other discussion on the board?
Yeah, you said there was a separate, you said there was a proposal been submitted?
Yeah, what it basically says, I'll read the proposal to you. See, the following is a proposal for videotaping the Volney Town Board meetings for the fiscal year 1994. A charge of $35 per meeting will be required, which will include 1 tape per meeting. Tapes will be unaltered and unedited and submitted to the town clerk following the meeting. Saved Video Productions will retain the master tape and copyrights in order to make any copies needed in the future for resale. Saved Video Productions will transport a tape to Video World and retain the master videotape, which will be aired on Fulton News channels for public viewing following each meeting. That's what he's offering us for $35 a meeting. I think it's very, very fair.
Considering how long a lot of our meetings run, $35 certainly isn't a real high payment.
No.
We're talking a little over $400, right?
For the year, yeah, $350, yeah. Right. So it's going to wipe out about a third of your contractual.
I got mine earmarked.
You got yours earmarked? Okay.
I think we have a question now.
Mark.
I personally think it's money well spent. I was wondering if there was any way we could donate some of this money to Oswego County. I'd love to see some of their meetings on TV. I understand they're having some trouble deciding on that.
The ACLU's taking it.
No.
For obvious reasons. Any other questions or comments? Tess? Barb, will you poll the council?
Counselor Pierce.
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway.
Aye.
Counselor Smart.
Aye.
Counselor Warner.
Aye.
Supervisor Rose.
Aye. I want to thank you again, Terry, for all your efforts. We really appreciate it. Next resolution, 94-98, move to authorize town clerk to give notice of a public hearing for local law number 3 for the payment of planning board expenses and the approval of subdivisions to be held Thursday, April 14th, 1994 at 7 p.m. at the Volney Town Hall. I'll move it.
I'll second.
For discussion?
Okay. Bill?
I think that we have to have, it should be inserted in there for site plan approval also.
Site plan approval also?
Oh, I agree.
Okay, so you want the notice to say planning board expenses and the approval of subdivisions and site plan approvals?
You could make that commercial site plan.
Okay, so residential site
Yeah,
plans you're not
yeah.
concerned about?
No, residential is pretty well covered with the code enforcement officer and all that, but the commercial ones like the mall and stuff like that, where you need the engineering studies, the commercial ones should be covered.
Okay. This will be going before our planning board for recommendation as well, and I don't believe it has to go before the county on this one. 239, does that apply on this one?
No, because it's a fee.
Okay. Any other discussion on the board on this one? Any discussion from the public? Okay. Barb, will you poll the council?
Counselor Pierce?
Aye.
Counselor Ridgway?
Aye.
Counselor Smart?
Aye.
Counselor Warner?
Aye.
Supervisor Rose?
Aye. Next resolution, 94-99. Claudia, do you want to move this one?
Okay, this is going to be a little bit longer than exactly what is in there, because we have to have the exact wording or else it won't be legal. I move a resolution providing a non-contributory plan with guaranteed benefits under Section 75E, a career retirement plan under Section 75G, and a new career retirement plan under Section 75I. At a meeting of the Town Board of the Town of Volney, held at the Town Hall in Fulton, New York, on March 10, 1994, Claudia Smart offered the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Volney is hereby elect to provide the additional pension benefits of Section 75E, Section 75G, and Section 75I of the Retirement and Social Security Law as presently or hereafter amended. Be it further resolved that this election shall be effective on the 17th day of March, 1994. I so move.
March 17, or why'd you up the week?
Okay, the reason why it is March 17th and not today is upon calling Douglas Burr, who is in charge of this with the state, that we cannot have this resolution become effective before the state has it in their hands. And so this way, we will have time with mailing for them to receive this before March 17th. And this will make it so that we have a Tier 1 employee with a road crew, EDCO. It would give him the right to take advantage of an early retirement system that the state is offering. It costs the town nothing. It just makes him eligible for something the state wants to give him.
Did we have a second yet, Howard?
No.
I'll second that.
Okay, Jim's going to second it. Any discussion on the board?
Well, the only discussion I think earlier we was talking about with these sections, this wasn't something we're leaving ourselves open for, like what happened with
The unemployment issue.
the unemployment issue, that somebody else could come up later.
This only makes it so people
This is
who
Tier
are
1, right?
Tier 1, and we only have one Tier 1 employee.
It's not- Or was it Tier
Or
1?
Tier 1 and Tier 2, but there's only one
There's only
person.
one person.
There's only one person in the town that qualifies for this. If they extended it some later date, it would have to be a separate resolution.
I'd like to know what you made a statement that the state would give them more. The state don't give you nothing. I mean, if this is too vague and we hadn't discussed it that much, there's more to it than what was presented the other night, and I'd like to have time to read what these other sections are, because retirement plans are funny, and I'm just not comfortable with it. Looking at it.
Basically, it's just making it so that he has, can get extra years credit so he can retire a little bit earlier.
Is this the one that the gentleman's on compensation now?
Yes.
But this question was asked before he got hurt, before he went in and had his operation. He asked this question before this ever come up, that he had heard that the state was giving a 5-year buyout. I know I talked with Ed before this happened, and he did say he'd been to, I think he talked to you too, didn't he, Howard? And asked about the state was coming up with a 5-year buyout, early retirement.
They just don't...
These are only for people...
Being involved in compensation, insurance and everything, lots of times your compensation will pay more, if you got hurt on a job, will pay more than any retirement pension that's offered.
Well, he
might be hurting himself in the long run if he hasn't checked this out.
Well, he wouldn't be forced to retire. This would just make it legal that he could.
After, when it's all over with, he decided he wanted to go.
Then we should be able to have time to review what it is. Basically, I don't know what we're voting on it.
Was there a time element on this, Claudia, that had to be done in so many days or something? Or?
I thought that is what Bob was saying.
Was there any of these sections available?
This is only for employees that the full amount of the retirement is paid by the state anyway, so it isn't anything from the town at all.
It's the non-contributory plan that used to be in...
Right, anybody that's hired new is on Tier 4. They can't be put under Tier 1 or 2.
Well, if we table this, we may end up having to have a special meeting to discuss it in the interest of time, because I think this does have to be done quite soon if we're going to approve it. And I hate to deprive anybody of some benefit that is available. It's not going to cost us anything. But if you're not comfortable with it, Bill, I don't have a problem with tabling it and maybe calling a special meeting after we get more information on it.
Do we have these sections available to us?
Well, I think we'll have to get them if we want to know. You know, I'm trusting Bob Kerfing's word on this, that it is something that's not going to cost the town anything, and it's not anything we're going to get stuck with later on. But, you know, maybe Bob could have been misled, I don't know.
Well, when I talked to the gentleman from the state, he said basically it's just you're allowing your employee to retire early. That's all.
And basically it is on the non-contributory plan, and we only have one person that's involved in the non-contributory plan.
Yeah, well, I think there's enough question about this that maybe we should table it and have a special meeting for it. Would you feel comfortable with that, Bill?
I don't. You can vote on it. I'm only
don't, Jim?
Well, we seem to have so many special meetings.
I realize.
I mean, I'm getting to a point where I can't keep track of special meetings.
I'm only one vote.
No, I know, but I don't want to deprive you of making a decision here if you want to support it or not support it. And if you don't have the information you need, that's part of our job here, is to get all the information we need to make a sound decision. So if you're not comfortable with it, and
Well,
be
I know
honest with
this,
you.
the literature was handed to us Tuesday night.
Yeah, we've only had 2 days to even think about it, and with everything else going on, it's something we haven't given a priority to. And I'm not sure how quickly we can get information that would confirm either way that this is...
Well, if this plan is already in effect, we must have a policy on hand.
Well, it's the state retirement, Bill, and it's a non-contributory plan where the employee or the town doesn't contribute anything. It comes out of the total state taxpayer's pocket.
The state would be required to issue the person involved a copy of that.
It's, I've never seen a copy of any of them.
You have the document that says there's no cost to the town on it, too, right?
Well, right here it says non-contributory.
Based on salary data provided and current billing rates for New York State fiscal year, there's no additional annual cost for providing the benefits of Section 75E, non-contributory plan with guaranteed benefits, 75G, the career plan, or 75I, the no career plan. If the employer is interested in providing this benefit to Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees, the enclosed resolution must be completed and returned to the retirement system. Some of this, the copy wasn't very good. The problem is it's only valid to do this. This no-cost quotation is valid until March 31st, 1994.
What do they mean by no-cost quotation?
It means in the future they may offer this, but it would cost us something.
It would cost us or cost him a penny.
Right, it would cost somebody.
I'm not comfortable with it.
I'm not either, really. I trust Bob in this, but I think I'd like to take a little closer look at it, too, and plus that's part that's kind of blurred out there. I want to see what that actually says. So I'm going to move to table it.
I'll second.
And, you know, we only need a majority to show up to prove it, so...
Well, it's just as long as we, because, I mean, you don't have a lot of time till March 31st.
Okay, well, I will ask tomorrow morning to see if we can get a better copy of that and we'll discuss with Bob again, and if we have to...
Well, we can call that gentleman from the state.
If I can get enough information, I'll call a special meeting Saturday morning or Monday, late in the day. And we'll take care of it.
Try Sunday. We haven't had one on Sunday yet.
Sunday? Okay.
I'm not going to be here at all next week.
See, I have a real problem, however, with the special meetings, the way we're calling them, because it seems as though that we're just calling them for either a Saturday, and if you can show up, fine. If you can't, as long as we got a majority on the board, fine. Well, then all of a sudden, we're supposed to discuss one issue, and there are about a dozen other things that seem to come up, and they're acted upon. And then in the minutes, it says, for example, of one last Friday, or 2 weeks ago Friday, that I didn't attend, that I said I couldn't attend, was just to give some action for the fire department. Well, boy, there were a lot more things discussed and done there than I was told was going to happen, yet I couldn't make it. And this seems to be a situation that is happening more and more now. We talked about having our zoning and planning meetings, for example, the first Wednesday of the month. Well, I cleared my calendar. Then I come in and I find out that it's going to be the first Tuesday. Well, I already have a commitment. I won't be here again. But in the minutes it says, Councilor Ridgway not there. Well, I don't mind if you give me advance notice, but you say I'll do it either Saturday morning or Monday afternoon. Well, I have meeting Monday afternoon. And I have a very, very full calendar, but I can make accommodation if you give me a week or two. But to do things as we've been doing them, it seems like we have a meeting every 20 minutes, and we do them at 5:30 in the evening, and it, from my point of view, doesn't make sense. What it does is it excludes me to a great extent to some of these, because I have a very full calendar. My calendar is full. And I'm sure that other people here have a full calendar also. But I also work in Syracuse, so.
For the zoning update meetings, when we do the discussion on the zoning laws, your plan board are the ones that are supposed to be doing the work on it and everything, and all the plan board members on the 6th, we found out that night, are going to be attending the Sewell County Planning Federation meeting on the 6th that was scheduled that we didn't know about. So we just moved it ahead of the day.
But I thought we said it was going to be the first Wednesday, for example.
Maybe after the first Wednesday, if I don't want everybody to make it.
Well, yeah, and then as long as it's the first Wednesday, but you...
But we all agreed when we started doing this last year that we all knew that there's certain times that some of us couldn't make the updates.
Okay.
Well, I understand your concern, Jim, and I apologize that it hasn't been convenient for you, but we've had an awful lot of business we've had to deal with the last couple of months, and I mean, it's cropping up every other day. It seems some things that we have to deal with that can't wait, and that's why we've had to have so many of these special meetings, which I don't really like either, because my calendar's pretty full, and I'm making an awful lot of exceptions, taking vacations just to be here and things like that. But in any case, this is something that I'm really not that comfortable with. I can tell Bill's not, and I'm not sure Jesse is, and I think it only came to us 2 days ago, and we need more time to digest it, and I hope that we can still meet the deadline on it and have it happen. I hope we don't cause a problem with delaying anything on this, but I do think we need to get a little more information.
Well, if you had to give it a week leeway, right, Claudia? That was basically what you wanted to give it, so it could be into the state by the due date. It runs out the 31st. Well, let's establish if we're going to establish a meeting, let's do it right here now. Not I might call one Saturday morning, or I might call one Monday.
Well, no, I would do that, Jim, but I don't know if we have that kind of time. That's the only thing, you know. And if it's something they tell me it's got to be done this week.
No, it's right here.
She said it right there.
We have to do it by the 31st.
So we've got until the 31st of March to vote on it.
No, because
They
we
gotta
did
get
a
it to
week
the
before
state.
to get it to the state.
Okay, so we can vote on it the 28th and mail it out. Good with that, right?
I would think we'd be... You want to set, I don't have a problem with a special meeting the 28th. That day's open with my calendar right now.
28th?
Yeah, that's open for me.
Can that be faxed to them, Howard? Probably can, can't it?
That only gives us 3 days.
I'll find out
pretty
that,
close.
too.
That's awful close to the deadline. Can we move it back?
That's the only day you have open for?
No. I've got some other ones, but let's set it. I can make the 19th, Saturday. I much prefer a Saturday morning meeting, 9 o'clock.
Mail or certified mail, then it's filed the date it's mailed,
The date it's mailed, it's filed, okay.
If it's registered or certified.
and I can do that.
Then the 28th would be fine? I don't have a problem.
Do you want to wait till the 28th, or you want to just do it on a Saturday morning, get it out of the way? Because from
I don't care. I just want to get it.
Why don't we do this? I'll get the information tomorrow. I'll call you first, Jim, to find out what your calendar's like, and then I'll work down the list until we get everybody there, okay?
Good enough, yep.
Okay, so this motion is tabled, and we're going to look into it tomorrow, and we'll go from there.
So I'm gonna see if we get some copies of this.
Well, I'll get a better copy of what Claudia has from whoever. You got an address or name for that,
I
right?
just wonder if we had these
Okay.
sections of retirement law on it they're talking about here.
I believe that's the last resolution, wasn't it, Bud? Okay. No, I think we've done them all. New business. Does anybody have any new business? You got some, but you don't want to bring it up tonight?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm not
Okay.
going to say anything tonight.
Okay. Petitions. Any petitions? Any public comment? Colleen, you had your hand up first.
This is going back to what you and Claudia were referring to earlier. I just wanted to read a definition of something from the Oswego County Business Magazine from April and May of 1993. This is an article by Brian Caswell, and it's called Code of Ethics for the Business Community. And there's a definition in here. It says, conflict of interest exists when an individual is essentially serving two purposes or performing two functions which are on opposite ends of the transaction. I just thought you'd be interested. Another thing I wanted to say was, where'd it go? Let somebody else talk, Howard. I gotta find something.
Alan, did you have something?
Yes, at the risk of saying something here that may not be quite appropriate, but Mr. Pierce did kind of holler a little bit about the Boy Scouts. I am a card-carrying Girl Scout. I have been to Juliet Lowe's birthplace, and my wife, Donna, is the troop coordinator for town of Hannibal, town of Phoenix, and the Fulton City, the Fulton School District, which includes, of course, City of Fulton, Granby Elementary, and Volney Elementary School. The Girl Scouts are always in need of leaders. There have been instances where there have been children who wanted to belong to a troop, but the troop size has to be kept to a certain limit, and they were unable to have some children in these troops because of lack of leaders. So I would appeal to the people here and the people in the viewing audience to call my wife. That's her job, 598-9696, and tell her that you want to run a Girl Scout troop at levels from kindergarten up through high school. I forgot. I was trying to say something about... Oh, I know what it is. Here.
Mine's the second.
I'm a Rotarian. In the city of Fulton, we have luncheon every Thursday in a meeting, and a couple of weeks ago, the Mr. Osbelt from the legislature and Mrs. Mary Beadle Snyder, Mr. Michael Chuck and Michael Treadwell, and another gentleman whose name I do not remember, who was the human resources person from Miller, showed up and this was the day of the vote of the EDC, and they were running their little show on how good the EDC was, and they handed out the names of you council members to the people, to us Rotarians, and tell us that we should call you before 5 o'clock to tell you, which way to vote. Everybody knew which way that they wanted us to voted in. The important thing is that Mrs. Mary Beadle Snyder handed out an article from Forbes magazine, about 4 or 5 pages, and asked us to read it. And while they were going over all the advantages of the EDZ, which I had heard before, I decided to quickly read through this. And it was from Forbes magazine. It pointed out that for every 4 jobs lost in the United States during the recent recession, 3 were New York State. 3 of the jobs were located in New York State, which is a powerful statistic. I got to reading it, and I get down to the end and read the last paragraph and thought, did she really read this? Because if she read this, she shouldn't be asking us to read it, because what the last paragraph said was that the economic woes of New York are not economic, they are in fact political. And until and unless the state legislature gets into some real political reform, and that the state, county, and town and other municipal levels of government strive to cut taxes, and then New York is going to keep having the same problems. I thought that was interesting. I wanted to point that out to the people here and the council members here and the other people who weren't quite sure how the EDZ vote should have gone. And I think it's important that we listen to the experts, and if they say it is a political problem, I believe that. And I believe that at the time, and I believe that this council voted the proper way.
Mark?
Howard, I have about 4 loose ends that maybe we should comment on, because we haven't talked to them in a while. I'll just read them, and the board can address them whoever feels appropriate. One is the unemployment benefits that came up not too long ago, where we stand on that. The roads in the Glen, too, I think should be commented on. The tower lawsuit, the status of that, and where we are in the park.
Okay, the first one on the unemployment, right now we're waiting to hear about a hearing. I've requested a hearing. Matter of fact, at the Association of Towns meeting, I brought it up at a couple of different meetings that were down there. Nobody had ever even heard of such a thing. Even the controller's booth that I went to, who should be aware of things like this being allowed or existing, had never heard of it, and they told me they were going to look into it. The Association of Towns attorneys themselves said that they were aware that this could happen. When I brought it up publicly, they said they wish I hadn't, because I opened a can of worms, and probably all the appointed officials from all over the state are going to be running to apply for unemployment benefits. But in any case, they acknowledged the problem, and they told me that they would work with me to try to get legislation passed to disallow that on the local level and in small town government, or city governments too, I suppose. But because they understand the effect it can have on a budget when you don't have monies appropriated. And that was the main thing. The next one was the tower issue. Okay, the tower issue, to this date, nothing has come back. No appeals have been made that I know of. I believe the deadline was a couple days ago. So unless this, our attorney, Dennis Hawthorne, has not received anything. Now, I'm not sure if the weekend counted against us for time. If it did, I still think we're safe, but that's all I know on that. Mm-hmm.
The roads in the Glen and the park.
Okay, the Rose and Glen bill, I'll let you address that, because you brought that up at a meeting here a week or so ago.
Well, we checked with the attorney and showed him stuff that I just can't put it simply. I don't know how to, I'm not a lawyer to explain this stuff, I guess, but Our attorney said that never do you make an agreement to take over a road like this. And we're basically what we got a mud hole down there that the town taxpayers are going to have to pay. And I hope that we have enough money in the highway department to cover the cost of the repair. It's bad down there right now, and we haven't even got the spring thaw here. If anybody would like to see pictures of it, I got pictures of them. The roads, they weren't completed, the gutters weren't completed. I think the safety of the residents down there, they ought to be concerned on the issue down there. I don't know when our highway superintendent can get in there to repair it, to make them more safe, but as our attorney says, we're gonna have to eat what we bought.
Weight of the roads, traffic on the road.
I think until we find out, it'd be a good idea. I don't know how they do it, but they already put a 2-ton per axle weight limit down here. They probably ought to, as far as I was concerned, I'd like to see them restrict it right down to automobiles and pickup trucks until the highway department can find the money to repair the roads. You know, allow the town trucks to go in there and plow, but any other heavy vehicles stay off. What we can do about it, the attorney just says that we accept them and the town taxpayers are going to have to. Yeah, that's what he said.
It appears that we got stuck.
He's checking into what legalities there are involved and whether or not we can just close some of those roads.
Charlie.
Okay. The park, well, right now the weather obviously has been against us. I was hoping for a little bit better weather by now, but as soon as we do get the weather that allows us to get in there and start moving earth and so on, we still hope to possibly get the volleyball courts, the basketball court, and the start of the softball play area. Well, the schedule is based on the weather, first of all, and second of all, on the manpower we can get together, because it's going to be a volunteer effort as we started out doing, unless I can get the highway department to get involved with us.
Any volunteers today as far as the
the volunteers we have are the ones we had 2 years ago that have been standing and waiting. You know, I hope they're all still there. Individuals and companies, yeah. Northern Ready Mix has volunteered to do, or not volunteer, but volunteered to donate a lot of materials for the different things that we were trying to put together, and we've had a few contractors that are willing to invest their time and their equipment to help us out, and maybe there'll be more forthcoming. We hope to have a meeting when the weather breaks where we can be realistic about getting started and try to corral in some more volunteers and some more support. Okay?
They had a recreation meeting Monday night. Donna was there, and I don't know, they sounded as soon as the weather broke that they were going to get in there and get the dirt peeled back, you know. Get rid of it so that, because the area where the basketball courts and volleyball is, that's got we're talking all mostly sand anyways,
right,
to build it up where it's got to be.
Yeah.
And once you get the dirt off, if it's not too wet, then they can get into what we got to do for draining and put the drainage and put the dirt back on. As far as like they were talking, the ball field, if they can get to it this year, if there's no ruts in it, keep it mowed, the kids would be happy to play on it anyways.
Right.
Is there a plan to surcharge any old kids that might want to go out there doing that?
Not at this time. No, we haven't discussed any of that at all. Of course, we're hoping our costs will be low because volunteers are going to be doing it.
We have a place to go, we won't have to go to cold.
Any other comments? Colleen, you wanted to finish what you started before? Okay.
Sorry. This only looks long, it really isn't. I wrote a letter to the editor, and the Taylor Times was very kind to publish it. But they did leave out a part, and I felt it was important that everyone know what my full letter was. I truly believe that everyone that doesn't live in Volney doesn't get it about the vote on the EDZ application. You see, our town board did what the majority of Volney residents wanted. When the infamous full-page advertisement in the Valley News ran, it backfired. At least the ad didn't accomplish what it was supposed to. Oh yes, the people called their town board members to voice their opinions, but it was to say, hold your ground, don't change your mind. The attempted harassment of our board didn't work. It only made us stand by our 4 board members' decision even more. At the meeting on Thursday, February 24th, the lone dissenting board member made an interesting comment. Jim Ridgway wanted to know why there wasn't going to be any public comment that night. Our supervisor, Howard Rose, told Jim that we had our public hearing previously, and why didn't these people speak then? Mr. Ridgway's response was they thought it was a done deal. Well, that's what the people in the town of Volney are sick of. Done deals. Done deals behind our backs, done deals that have to do with our town but we're not privy to, done deals with the Oswego County Industrial Development Agency, and done deals to take our land away. Done deals with the Neighborhood-Based Initiative, the Fulton Area Partnership, and done deals with the county government when we aren't even consulted. Our town board is elected by the people in the town of Volney. They serve with the permission of the voters. When they vote on an issue, they listen to what the majority of the public in Volney wants them to do. Not people who live in Fulton, not people who have benefited financially in the past from EDZs in Oswego, and certainly not people who have to pay back favors or something to gain by the issue passing. When Miller's announced they were closing in Volney, why were all the Fulton officials in the limelight? The plant is in Volney. If Nestle's or Seal Right were to close, would Volney officials be interviewed or consulted? No. Those factories are in Fulton, not Volney. It seems that the Miller closing is something that has attracted political factions all the way to Albany. If anyone listened to Mr. Ken Michalchuk speak on Wednesday, February 9th, 1994, he stated that officials from Miller's are in contact with the governor's office every week. Also that a beverage consultant was hired by the State Urban Development Corporation to help market the soon-to-be empty factory in Volney. So we're supposed to believe that the Fulton Chamber of Commerce, the Fulton Community Development Agency, and local officials can do a better job with our factory. Also, I feel everyone should know how the Volney-Fulton EDZ board would have been made up. The committee to appoint this board would have been Fulton Mayor Don Bullard, Volney Town Supervisor Howard Rose, and Oswego County Legislature Chairman Frank Church. With what has been going on lately with the county and Fulton being allies, do you expect us to believe that anything would go in Volney's best interest? Another thing that was said that angered many Volney residents was Ed Frawley's caustic remark to Mayor Don Bullard at the last Fulton Common Council meeting. Mr. Frawley said, after the fiasco out in Volney, I want to be appointed to go out there and explain the difference between annexation, EDZs, and IDAs. Ed does not carry a peace pipe to us. He holds a sharp spear to sever Volney-Fulton relations for good. So the EDZ application is one of those famous done deals that isn't going to get done because of what some people have done to Volney. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Even minutes without reading, I know that was a concern of yours last year.
That wasn't a concern of mine, it was a concern of Jess Warner's.
Well, no, in July you said you had comments that not everything was included in them, and you thought that they should be read, and not only should they be read, but they should be taken word for word in case there's ever a lawsuit against the town.
In July of when?
July of last year.
Of last year?
Yes.
I said they should be taken word for word?
Those weren't your exact words. I do have one quote from you. It said, this is a record of the town board and its conduct, and if we ever do go to court and there's information missing, well, we'll all know where that'll take us.
I think they should be comprehensive. Yeah, I don't think they should be verbatim word for word. We did do that a few years ago, and the reason we did that was because our town clerk at the time was leaving so much out that we figured the only way we could get what needed to be in there was to make him do them verbatim. I did not enjoy doing that. I didn't think it was fair to him, but it was the only way we could get him to take the minutes properly, we felt. As far as reading them word for word, if I said that, I must have misspoke, because I don't think we should be reading them word for word. We'd be here till about breakfast time if we did that.
And I'd like to ask Mr. Warner why you approve them now.
I did, but I've read some of them over, but if you want to hear them read, I got all night, but I'll sit right here. It doesn't make a difference to me. I just soon said it, I'll read some of them.
I was just curious why they changed your vote. I didn't know if it was something political or if it was...
No, the only reason is because we spent so much time on other things, we had so many of them piled up. But if you want to tie up another 2 hours, it doesn't bother me, I'll sit here and read them.
Maybe that's another thing we should look into if, you know, a lot of people have left here, maybe we should move the meetings up, or if there's a public hearing, move them up and have the regular meeting at 7.
I agree with that. As a matter of fact, I'm seriously thinking about in the future when we have public hearings that are controversial in nature, maybe have them on separate nights, because this is going on too long, and I apologize for that. Some public hearings don't amount to much of anything because they're just not controversial at all. But I'll really take that suggestion seriously. But the minutes are important, they really are. And for what I said before, you know, if we do have to go to court and certain things aren't in the minutes, it should be. But also we do have videotapes backing up the meetings now too, which helps a lot, even though they can't be used. That's not a problem, but when I have to go through and rewrite them and try to make them comprehensive, I don't have that kind of time, and I couldn't do it. So the only recourse I had was just to vote no on them.
Howard, I would say that in defense of Byron, certainly, because Byron's minutes, from my point of view, were as good, if not better, than the ones we're getting now. And I voted to accept these minutes because I firmly believe that they are something that we as a town board would look through, and if it has a general overview of what's occurred there, I certainly accept it. But I guess that I really do have a concern because you did constantly vote no on minutes.
For 2 years.
For 2 years you voted no, and those minutes, if you will check them, were as accurate, if not more accurate, than the minutes we're getting now.
Well, if I had time to check them to my liking, Jim, they weren't accurate.
But your liking was because Barbara's doing it now, and it was because Byron Rowley was...
It has nothing to do with Barbara, and it has nothing to do with Byron's ability. It had to do with the actual minutes.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure. And then the same way with Jess having to read them. It's absurd.
Now, can I open up and go back to a minute? I'd like to start reading some of them.
I don't think you're going to win any friends if they're doing that, Jeff.
Who the hell's trying to win friends?
I would like the minutes though earlier now, you know, Howard, we used to get them, I remember.
I agree. Well, understand, Jim, that we have a new supervisor, we have a new town clerk, a new bookkeeper, and we had no transition period, no one to show anybody what to do. We've been struggling with an awful lot of really heavy-duty issues the last couple of months. I had to apply for an extension on the year-end report because we had nothing to go by, and there's no way I could complete it in 60 days with everything that's been going on. Which was, you know, granted by the state, which is allowable. It's unfortunate, but if we had a transition period, maybe Byron could have helped Barb with a few things, but Byron wouldn't even show her a single thing in that office. So I don't want to hear about that.
Well, I tell you, there are two sides to that issue.
Yes, there certainly is. No, there wasn't too much left either.
No.
Is there any other public comment?
Supervisor and town clerk signs even left.
Okay. Hearing none, our future meeting dates, April 5th, 1994, zoning update at 7 p.m. April 12th, our bill signing and agenda preparation. April 14th, our next regularly scheduled town board meeting. And I'll add to that, April 14th at 7 p.m. Prior to that meeting, we'll have a public hearing, but I don't believe it'll be a long one, at least I hope not. Somebody want to move to adjourn?
I so move.
I'll second.
The meeting's going to be long enough because I'm going to be...
The preceding program was not a New Channels production, and New Channels has no responsibility for the content or opinions expressed therein.